I'm fine with
I can try
whatever.
through that. Okay. But
All right.
I think it'd be good to get into it. I just got back from work, so I'm kind of just like here. So I'm sorry if I'm a little bit just existing for a moment, but
That's entirely okay.
No problem.
You know I do this all the bloody time.
yeah.
Then allow me to, across many streams and several internets, welcome you all to our... It's not really Rain World and Wine and Cheese night yet, but it is time to have a natter about the world after Adult Swim, an army of slug cats that adorn my apartment, and just talk about, why The Watcher is so feckin' good. For those of you who have just joined us, myself and ICED have crossed the streams, but we are joined by Andrew, who is one of the individuals responsible for bringing us Downpour. I don't know, that sounds very vaguely threatening. So yeah. If any of you all have got questions for Andrew and whatnot, we'll do a quirky Q&A at some point this evening, and I will use this as an excuse to show off the Rainworld Steam page repeatedly because I'm allowed. I'm going to assume nobody needs a primer on what Rainworld is. It's a super cute, adorable indie platformer that is super easy. Rainworld was actually once described as the easiest easy game for babies. That's all you need to know. Oh. The first question is, why? Well, okay, so Andrew, just to introduce yourself to everybody, so what is your title and what have you been involved with predominantly on Rainworld?
Yes. Yeah, so I'm Andrew. I'm an indie game developer. I've worked on Rainbow Downpour and Rainbow the Watcher. For Rainbow Downpour, I was the project lead and the development lead. I was also the one that created all the Slugcats, Rivulet, Artificer, Gourmand, your Master Saint. Those are all my OCs. And
are they still OCs once they're canon?
I think at this point it belongs to the community more than me, but they're still my babies as far as I'm concerned.
I think they're officially C's now.
Yeah, I agree. And then for the Watcher, I was the development lead for that as well.
Pretty cool. I think that is the only thing that I would do just very, very quickly as a primer to everybody is that the quick history of Rainworld. Rainworld was a kickstarted title that was eventually picked up by Adult Swim and then abandoned by Adult Swim. It was later picked up by Akapura, not Annapurna. My dyslexic brain gets those two jumbled up, and has had two... See, I say DLCs, right? I say DLCs. The original Rainworld featured 3 official Slugcats, and 3 ginormous campaigns. Rainworld Downpour featured 5 Slugcats, official, with campaigns ranging from 6 to 20 hours, not counting fanciful endings and the extra. And The Watcher, the most recent one, I think, my run was 50 hours. So
yeah, it's not your typical campaign.
No. Well, and I don't want to paint it as like, you guys just came on in for the DLC. Like, no, this is huge undertakings.
Yeah, it's definitely not DLC in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
I mean, they're called DLCs, but personally, I consider them to be on the same scale as like a sequel.
Definitely far eclipsing the expansion packs of yore.
Yeah.
Our goal this evening was basically just to get everybody together. We're mostly going to be talking about The Watcher, but if you all want to ask any questions about Downpour or the Ilk, like, feel free. The only thing I'm going to say for this evening's conversation, spoilers for the Saint are off the table.
Okay.
Just because of all the campaigns, they are so experiential, but the Saint is sacred. It is the culmination of the Pebs and Moon saga, and it's such a beautiful capstone to it that I would hate for someone to come in and have that spoiled.
I'm fine with that.
Makes sense.
And one last thing.
There's
everybody
one
needs
thing
to
I'll
know.
say.
It is all Pebs' fault. We are all in agreement on that.
Of course.
Sorry, Ice, you were saying?
Well, there'll be one thing about Saint I definitely want to ask. It won't be obvious it's about Saint, but it'll be kind of relevant. The first thing I kind of want to say is something that you kind of just said a little bit ago, is talking about Downpour specifically in this case. Downpour was a lot of your project, a lot of other people's project. I know Will was very involved as well going through that. How do you feel now that essentially your babies are out there and people have their own interpretations and have their own feelings about all of the characters after all this time?
I mean, it's fascinating to me. I think that's a very rewarding aspect to me of making a video game, is putting it out to the world and seeing everyone interact with it and come up with their own headcanons, come up with their own branching. Like, a lot of people have their own OCs based on my OCs and things like that, inspired by my OCs.
Oh, yeah.
And seeing all this stuff, it's fascinating. I love all the fan art that we've received. It's a tremendous amount. It's insane.
Well, okay, it's worth saying, for those who don't know,
Yes.
there is a Rainworld fan art event yearly, which is huge. Like, it's the kind of thing that other communities would look at and wince.
The monthly, yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes, sorry, it is a month event. My apologies, but no, it's massive.
I think this year we got over 7,000 fan arts for Art Month this year. It's
no big deal.
insane.
Just a few.
I've actually I guess for those who haven't met me, I am a Rainworld fanatic. I've got my Sauron, Moon and Monk print next to me, plus all my pins on this side, and the back of my couch has every Slugcat plush that has been released.
Nice.
There's now the new strawberry one as well. Is what I've seen, if I'm not wrong.
Oh god, Sanshi's taking my money again. We could not get Christmas decorations this year just due to, I left it too late to buy them. So we just put all the Slugcats on the tree and it was brilliant.
That's awesome.
Oh no, thankfully it's a strawberry lizard. Because if I was buying all the lizards as well, I would be desolate.
Oh yes, yes, that makes more sense.
Also to whoever said Pebbles is just misunderstood. Okay, Google, how do I delete someone else's Twitch account? Okay, so let's do a little bit of history before we get into the nonsense. So you said that you started from kind of like a fan and modding perspective, and are now a part of the Rainworld team as it stands. Like, how did that come about?
There we go.
It's a very long story, but yeah, it's very interesting. So, I guess to start, originally back in 2017 when Rainworld first released, yeah, I was just another Rainworld fan in the Rainworld Discord, and I'm also a game developer myself, so I have a lot of technical knowledge. So once I finished my Rainworld playthrough, I really enjoyed the game, so I wanted to get into modding the game a bit, because that's a fun thing to do with the games that I really enjoy. So yeah, I joined the Rainworld Discord, and they had a modding channel in there for all the people who were also interested in modding the game. But at this point, this was only like maybe a month or like a couple weeks after the game first released. So the modding
Yes.
community was extremely young. Like people were just starting to figure out the very basics of modding the game. So I kind of got in at the ground level there, I guess, and was among kind of these first modders who were trying to pick apart the game and see how it works and figure out how we could modify it.
Yeah. So I guess for those who don't know, like, there's loads of facets to Rain World that are non-standard. Like, it looks like a 2D game, and it is, but like between the procedural animation system, between the ecology systems, and the sheer amount of things that are happening all at once, um, this isn't just like adding some extra NPCs into Skyrim. It's always really hard to give like context and framing to people who haven't done modding, just how complex a game like Rain World is behind the scenes compared to how simple it looks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah,
One
so
thing I
go for it, Ice.
One thing I always was interested in, well, there's two parts to it. Of one, how did you first even learn Rainworld exists? Because I know Rainworld wasn't exactly the most out there game, at least to start with. At least that was my experience with it. I kind of knew it existed around, but I didn't actually try it till a bit after Hunter Monk came out.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good
What drew
question.
you to it the first time?
Yeah, so even prior to Rain World, I was an indie game developer. I've been doing game development since 2001.
Okay.
So there was a website called Take Source, which if anyone's familiar with the Rain World history, I'm sure they've heard of that. That it was a forum where game developers would congregate to post development logs for their game, where they could post updates
It
about.
was a different time. It was a simpler time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was. So Rain World had a very extensive devlog on there that they would update all the time. It was very impressive. It was definitely one of the more comprehensive devlogs on the website. And me being a game developer, I also had my own devlog for the games that I was developing at the time. So for me, the way I discovered Rainworld was just going on there, updating my own devlog for my game. I always saw Rainworld there on the front page of Dick Source, just constantly on the front page, constantly growing in size. So it definitely caught my attention, just always seeing it there. So at some point, I just clicked on it, obviously, just to check out what this project was, and it immediately caught my attention. So I started following it from that point. And then once it eventually released, then I bought it like as soon as it came out.
Yeah, because I know I mentioned it a sec ago, but like, procedural animation was extremely uncommon for a very long time. I mean, it's still not something you see all over the place. Like,
It's very
that
difficult to
alone-
get right.
Yeah.
And it requires a lot of math knowledge, which not everyone has.
See, the funny thing is that I was a big nerdy music fan back when that was a subgenre, and so I was a huge fan of Bright Primate. So
Oh, nice.
I found out about Rain World from when James and Lydia got involved with the project.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. I saw them at GDC and I was like, hey, I know you from a gig you did at PAX a million years ago. And they're like, oh yeah, no, we're working with this guy Jawar on this game called Rain World. I'm like, tell me more.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I didn't expect it to become my entire personality as a game, but...
Yeah, me too. Yeah, Rainbow does things to people.
Yup. Oh yeah, just very, very quickly. So, were there any other titles you worked on, like pre to Downpour?
Not any that you would have heard of.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was all like my own projects. I didn't work on things with like other people, like my own solo projects, and yeah, they're all pretty like small, obscure games. So,
Okay.
Have you released any of these ones? If we did want to see them, that's of course up to you if you want to tell us about them. But
I have some videos of them on my YouTube channel and some
Yeah.
downloads on my website, but most of them are kind of like um, incomplete. They're more like proof of concept, prototype type of stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you fall in love with Rainworld. You hit the modding community. Um, again in 2017, which should not be as long ago as it was.
I
That's
know it doesn't feel
illegal.
like it.
Um, what was the process?
Yes,
Well, I guess what went from you know community
yeah,
enthusiasm to full time dev.
exactly. Yeah, so I guess the next thing was that okay, so we were in the early stages of figuring out how to mod the game. And one of the early mods that someone made was just a simple like Slugcat character mod. Um, but the challenge back then was this character mod that this person made. It replaced the Survivor character entirely. So once you had the mod installed, you couldn't play Survivor anymore. And you could also, at that time, the limitation was you can only have one character mod installed at a time. So that was the challenge I wanted to kind of work on and overcome. So I created my own mod called the More Slugcats mod, which it was mainly just a technical it was mainly just a technical experiment. I wanted to see if I can make a mod that allows you to add more than one character to the game and also make it so that you don't have to replace the Survivor character. You could have different characters that play alongside the Survivor campaign. So I made this very simple. Well, it wasn't that simple, but I think I spent like 2 weeks on this mod. It added the 5 new characters to the game: Spearmaster, Gormand, Rivulet, Saint, and Artificer. But at that time, it was just they were basically the exact same thing as the Survivor campaign. It was just you play the Survivor campaign again, but you have a Slugcat that has slightly different abilities, and they're like recolored. So it was a very, very simple version of what we have now in Downpour.
Okay.
But since I guess again this was so early into the modding community at the time, this was kind of like a big thing because this was one of the first character mods that anyone had made, and no one had made one quite to the scale yet. So like a lot of people played in, a lot of people it got a lot of attention, I guess. So and I guess another interesting thing is this actually predated the update that added the monk and the hunter. So these 5 Slugcats technically have been around before even those. So later the update came out that added monk and hunter, and I needed to update my more Slugcats mod to be compatible with this new version of the game. Um, but that was going to be a bit of a process, and also around that same time, Video Cult had released the level editor to the community. So we now had this new tool in our hands where we can make custom regions and custom routes for the game, which was not possible before. So with all these things happening all of a sudden, like I kind of had the idea that if I was going to update this mod to the next version, and we also have all these new tools available to us, I want to kind of expand the mod a bit. Well, not a bit, a lot. So I wanted to use the level editor that we had and expand the mod so that each of those 5 Slugcats each get one unique region for each of them in their campaign. So that kind of began this endeavor to kind of take this mod from just a little simple tech demo to something more fleshed out. And I guess with the mod's popularity at that time, I was able to get a lot of other people interested in helping me with it. So we built a little development team with artists and musicians and level designers, and we built the development team for the More Slugcats mod, and it grew in scope from there. From originally just going to be the 4 slugheads plus 4 new regions to, I mean, the 5 slugheads plus 5 new regions to what we have today, which is like 5 slugheads, all with very unique storylines, 10 regions, all these new game modes. And this went from being what was probably going to be just a few month long project to being like a 5 year endeavor.
Zedcast, are you saying that scope creep struck from the shadows?
Yeah, it was an insane amount of scope creep, but we made it work somehow.
Yeah.
I definitely want to give a shout out to everyone else on the More Slugheads team, because I don't think they get enough credit. It was definitely not just me that worked on the More Slugheads mod. I only contributed maybe like 30-40%, and the other 60% was all the other contributors. So they definitely need work. Go look at the credits list. There's a lot of other people who worked on this.
Sorry, just casting eyes into chat. Wolvar was saying that it is insane to them that anyone actually made anything with the original editor. That's pretty standard for game dev tools. You make them. It's like you're building a ship, but you have to build your own tools to build that ship. They're not supposed to be seen by anyone else. They're not supposed to be used by anyone else. Don't worry about it. And Viral's just with, I prefer to call it scope surprise.
Before we go terribly far into kind of where we've been going, there's one thing I did want to ask, which was, well, 2 parts, I suppose, was before Monk and Hunter released, there was there's RainDB.
Yes.
Which I don't think most people even know what that is, if you can explain what that is. And 2, it sounded like people started making their own level editor before the official one started to come out. If you can talk about that.
Yes. Okay, so first, RainDB, which it actually is still relevant today, even though it's not as well known anymore. So RainDB is basically the analogous thing to Steam Workshop. It's a website that hosts all of the Rainworld mods that people have made. Back in the day, that was the only place you could get a compendium of all the Rainworld mods that have been released, other than the Rainworld Discord. But today, it's still relevant because Steam Workshop is only accessible if you own the game on Steam. But if you own the game on other platforms like GOG or Epic Game Store or itch.io, then you still need to use RainDB to download your mods. You can't use Steam Workshop. So it still exists, and I still maintain it. But yeah, that was basically the modding database that I ran that hosts all the modding tools and mods that people have made. And it's come a long way. Like back then, for people to get their mods on the site, they literally had to like send me a DM on Discord for me to like manually put their mod up on the site. So the workflow is much nicer now.
As much as modding changes, it stays the same.
Yeah.
It was super interesting to see how that all worked back then. It was also, I don't even remember what it was to apply the mods. I know they changed it to BFMX. I forget what that first.
Yeah, I mean, in the original Rainworld, you could only have one mod applied at a time. That was the restriction.
Part of that other bit was that level editor people started to make. If you can talk about that.
Yeah, that was actually my project as well. Before the official level editor was given to us, obviously that was another big thing that we wanted to learn how to do, is to add new regions and add new rooms to the game. But we didn't have a way to do that yet, so I started making my own level editor for the game, trying to deconstruct how all the room files worked and whatever. And at some point, I had started posting some screenshots of the level editor that I was making to Twitter, and James from Video Cult saw the level editor that I was making, and he was like, "Whoa, hold on, you don't have to do all that. That's crazy. We'll just give you our level editor."
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Because all I was going to add was just I was not involved in the Rain World modding scene, and it actually didn't really start to delve into it until the Steam Workshop releases.
Yes.
But what was fascinating was kind of watching it from the other side, watching how like Video Cult were attempting to add as much as they could to the game with what resources they had. You know, i.e. that the Switch release of Rain Worlds allowed them to add a lot of additional content and things like that. And I find that so fascinating. Like how all these different pieces intersected.
Yeah.
Darn it! I lost all of our train of thoughts. I just did I just did a train heist right there. So we've covered
kind of in time zone time. Let's say Monk and Hunter just released more Slugcats. Oh, one of the things I know that was always like the thing that caught people's eye with RainDB back then is also maybe people don't know as well was the old dating sim that used to exist. I also don't know anything about it because I did not dare to launch it once. If there's anything you have to say about that, it's also part of the more Slugcats characters have changed a good amount since back then as well.
Yeah, so the old dating sim, it was just a April Fool's prank for the More Slugcats Discord. Where for April Fool's one year we posted a fake announcement that More Slugcats is done, you can go download it now. But instead they just got the dating sim.
Could do Slugcat with an AK every year.
Yeah. But it's similar to the dating sim that's in the final release, just a completely different script. So all different text, all different scenarios, but same underlying engine.
Okay, so we have we're going to do our full story. So we've got our DB, we have our setup.
Yep.
The More Slugcats has been progressing well from a quick idea to what would be a 4-year project. But there's a big leap between, being part of a modding community and being a thing that is for sale and is canonical as part
Exactly.
of. And again, to those of you who might just be kind of like skimming through, it is really hard to understate how much of a cult hit Rain World was. I guess just for framing, it didn't resonate with reviews at the time. I've talked about this a lot, but lots of individuals who reviewed the game were expecting yet another cutie patootie platformer because of the adorable Slugcat and everything, and what they got was a brutal ecology sim. And reviewers at the time bounced off it hard, but those of us who persevered with it got something really unique and really special. So to say that Rain World was a smash hit out the gate would be a lie. But community stuck with it and made incredible creative things. But now we're past that. Like, you are part of the individual teams who have worked on Rain World. How did that come about?
Yeah. So the context you need for that, which you mentioned a little bit earlier, was so Rain World, it was originally published by Adult Swim Games. And things were going good up until shortly after the Hunter and Monk update came out. And then I don't know how much I can say about this, but let's just say for reasons, Video Cult was no longer able to update their game anymore. They could not release any more updates for it under Adult Swim.
What we know publicly now is that Adult Swim were in the process of slowly kind of winding down.
Okay.
After Rain World was one of the last of the kind of like unique in like standalone games, not based on an Adult Swim IP. I believe Samurai Jack was the last one that they had a genuine hand in, but by that point, the old Adult Swim game team was gone. Like, we caught up with Steve Gee, the man, the myth, the legend, who was biz dev on making sure Rain World happened. We caught up with him last year. He's doing cool. He was working on that awesome Japanese street racing game. It's rad, but that's another story. But we now know that Adult Swim were planning on just sunsetting Adult Swim games. At the time that the last big Rainbow update under Adult Swim went out, as we would later on find out, that they only wanted to work on things where they owned the IP, and then they were just like, you know what, feck video games.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much correct. And I guess as part of that process of them sunsetting their studio, that was kind of the reason why Rainworld was no longer able to receive updates. But Video Cult was still locked under the contract with Adult Swim Games, so as part of that contract, they couldn't just independently release Rainworld stuff, and they also couldn't just easily get out of the contract. So it kind of began like a long, like 4 year legal battle to kind of break that contract so they could get out of that situation and get themselves under a new publisher, which would allow them to finally work on their game again. So yeah, during that time there was a lot of uncertainty. They weren't even necessarily sure if they were ever going to get access to Rainbow back, so they started working on other projects. Like we have Airframe Ultra now. They were also working on a couple other projects that you might have seen at the time, like Animalman and Signal. But yeah, eventually they succeeded in getting out of the Adult Swim Games contract. They got established with the new publisher, Akupara Games. And that's where things kind of got interesting because you had this kind of interesting situation where Rainworld hadn't been receiving any official updates for like 4 years now, but the community was still super active, like more active than it had ever been before, despite the game not receiving any updates.
Yeah. See,
So
I was over there with my little fingies crossed because I noticed that there were a few games that managed to get out from under Adult Swim.
yeah,
Like Battle Chef Brigade and a few others, and I'm like, what's moving? What's shaking? We're gonna get to see some
Yeah.
new stuff, and we did.
Is it Duck Game too?
Is it Duck Game 2? Did Duck Game get out?
Was Duck Game? I'm pretty sure they did, but I'm not sure how much they got updated after.
Yes,
I
they
think
did
they
get out.
got like the big mode. Yeah.
They are. I think they're self-published under Corpotron Games Corporate. That's
Amazing.
another story. Sorry, please continue.
okay. Yeah, so yeah, I guess both Video Cult and the new publisher were kind of in a predicament now because now they have their game back, but because they weren't even sure that they were going to get the game back, they obviously didn't do any work on the game in the meantime. So it's kind of like, okay, we got our game back and we want to release updates for it, but it's already been years without any updates, and if we start making something from scratch now, it's still going to be many, many years before we can release anything to the public. So I think the new publisher was kind of in this predicament where it's like, okay, we have this game now. What are we going to do with it? Because we don't want to just wait to be like, hey, we're the new publisher, and then proceed to just not do anything with the game for like the next like 4 years while they develop something new.
Yeah,
So
never encountered that from a publisher ever. Sarcastically.
yeah, so I think Akupara Games was kind of trying to figure out what they're going to do with Rainbow now that they have this new IP and have access to make new things for the game again. So the first thing they noticed is kind of what I said, which was that it was very interesting that despite Rainbow not receiving any updates for 4 years, its community just kept growing and growing in size and activity.
Yeah,
So that's something that really stood out.
Like,
Yeah,
it's people throw around the word cult classic a lot, and I know I mentioned this at the beginning of the stream, but it does bear repeating that Rainbow was also continuing to sell. In fact, it was doing better year in, year out than its kind of launch window, which is wild.
yeah,
And you could just see it by the sheer growth on it.
yeah, exactly. You don't see that very often.
No.
It's with just going off with the main Discord. I remember seeing some analytics that were shown at one point. I believe it's still true now. It only at least the main Discord, at least, have been exponentially growing in viewers. So just constantly doubling each year, and that kept being true,
Now,
which was super cool.
it
Yeah.
makes sense to say now because like Rainworld, because like what 2016, 2017, we're starting to see the wind down of like the traditional, I shouldn't say traditional, of like the post blogosphere game journo site. You know, these poor buggers who were getting paid peanuts but still had to review like a 40-hour game in a night. You
Yeah,
know,
that's awful.
they had a terrible time of it. I don't want to paint the journos of yore like they were, you know, gods who brushed Rainworld off. But, you know, Rainworld's difficulty didn't really resonate with them because they were expecting something different. But for those of us who struggled through it, who actually got to see this beautiful story essentially told in like the second person, it was the kind of thing that you really could tell people about. Like, you've got to experience this for yourself. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a cute game, it's brutal, but if it gels with you, it'll change you. And that percolated and grew. And then, you know, as we saw the growth and rise of, you know, Twitch and stuff like that, you know, combined with a very active community, like, it's a perfect little like grow bed to take a cult classic into a big success. Sorry, this is my obsession. I love talking about this. Don't get me started.
I love it. Yeah, so
Oh yeah, you keep going. I think you're about to
Okay.
say what I was gonna ask.
and I was just gonna say, so that's kind of where they were at with acquiring Rainworld. So yeah, so I guess that was the first thing that stood out to them, was that obviously Rainworld's community is like the main reason why it's maintained this growth for so long. So they noticed, one, that Rainworld gets like an insane amount of fan art, and also that Rainworld's modding scene is super active. So as like the new publisher, those were like their two focuses that they like really wanted to like immediately focus on, those two things, and kind of cater those two things as a new publisher. So one, they wanted to really embrace the Rainworld Art Month that they've been doing every year, to just keep supporting the community's fan art. And then they looked at the modding community, and they were trying to figure out what they can do with the modding side of Rainwood as well. So I guess that's kind of where we came in, which was like, they don't want to make something from scratch right now just because it would take too long, but how can we utilize all this cool stuff that the community's already been making to kind of get something interesting out to the community as a new publisher, like as soon as possible. So they started reaching out, I guess they reached out to us because we were kind of like the biggest mod at the time that still hadn't been officially released. And it was just like very good timing because we were like almost done with the mod, but it hadn't been released yet. So they were like, okay, can we work together with you? Especially Akupara, they're kind of their core skill set is also in like boarding games. Is like they're half like a development studio and half like a boarding publisher.
Yeah.
So it was kind of that was something they saw that they could add value to, as well as right now all these mods can only be played by people who own the game on PC. But they were like, hey, what if we use our porting knowledge to port some of these mods to console as well, so that all the console players who didn't have access to mods can also get to play some of these mods. So that was kind of like some of the ideas they were juggling around, of like what value they can add to Rainbow as like the new publisher immediately. So yeah, that's basically how More Slugcats mod went from being a mod to being what later became Downpour. Is the publishers reach out to us and they're like, hey, we see you're making this really big mod. It's almost done. Can we work together with you to port this to consoles and also make it into like an official DLC instead of it just being a mod, a free mod?
And now
That's
here the heck we
interesting.
are.
Yeah.
I always wasn't sure if it was Video Call that reached out or if it was Akupara themselves, but that makes sense. the way you
Yeah.
put that. One of the other things I'd kind of ask, so I reached out to more Slug Cats, but it wasn't just more Slug Cats, it was also everything else, and also Remix.
Yep.
Was it just them asking a bunch of people, or how did it end up being everything? Downpour, that is. How did it end up being everything that it ended up being?
So I think they reached out to Riv Otter first, as he was kind of the one managing all the stuff in the Rainbow community. And then Riv Otter kind of pointed them in the direction of like, hey, from my perspective as someone who's been watching the Rainbow community, here's like some points of interest I think you guys should check out. So he kind of, I guess, referred them to the more Slugcats mod and the other mods that became part of Downpour.
Okay, so I've got a bit of a fluffy question,
Yes.
but when did it hit you that this was very real? Because, like, for those of you who haven't worked dev side, like, you get emails and things that come through all the time, and sometimes they're crazy ideas and they happen, and sometimes they're crazy ideas and they don't. But when it hits you, it's always the fascinating moment. Like, when did it hit you that Downpour was real?
Yeah, it was. I guess it happened in multiple instances. So I think for me too, like I said even earlier on, as like in the past as a indie game developer, I've kind of worked on a lot of proof of concepts and prototypes and stuff, but I've never actually been particularly good at finishing projects. I always make something interesting and then move on to something else. So I think that was one of the instances for me where it was kind of like I got this really impressive team working on the game, and we're like really working on this for the long haul, and everything's finally like coming together. So I think that was the first instance for me where it's like, wow, I'm actually going to finish this project. This isn't just going to be like another prototype that I abandon at some point. So I think for me that was one moment that was like, ooh, this is real. This is like an actual real game that I'm going to finish, like bring it to the finish line. And then I guess the next moment was then again when Octopower reached out and they're like, hey, we want to make this an official DLC. It's like, oh wow, this is like I was thinking I was just going to release this as a free mod, and now this is like an actual like official published video game that's going to be on like consoles. It's going to be on Steam and stuff. Like that was also a very huge moment.
Because, like I said,
Very, very, very surreal.
I have the full cast of Downpour on the back of my couch. In fact,
Yeah.
the rivulet
Oh my
takes
God.
great joy in falling off the couch at the most inopportune moments.
Yeah, the merch too. I never thought there would be merchandise of my characters.
Yeah, and Sanshi's
That's
gone
super
hard.
cool. They have.
So I guess the only other thing that I wanted to touch on in like the dev discussion is Downpour has dropped. It has done very, very well. I mean, I can only go by the external figures, but like, looking by how many reviews there are of Rain World, of Downpour versus the title, like we're looking at a huge attach rate. Like Downpour's done great. So then you have this established formula for making extra stuff for it. What was the process of going from that to where we are now with the Watcher?
Yeah, so the Watcher was interesting because now we kind of go into the second chapter, which was like with Downpour. Video Cult didn't really have time to get involved, just because one, they already had their attention on other projects that they were working on. Because, like I said, they didn't even know that they were going to get access to Rainbow back, so they already had moved on. They're already working on other projects. So now that they got Rainbow back, they're kind of like, this is cool, but we're like in the middle of something else right now. So like we can't just immediately jump to Rainbow. We want to kind of continue working on the other projects that we're working on right now. And then also just the whole idea that like making a Rainbow project from scratch takes a long time. So I think Watcher was kind of the moment where that could all come together, where they can be like, hey, we can set aside some time to like actually work on Rainworld in parallel with our other projects, and we're also ready now to like make an actual Rainworld project from the ground up rather than just doing what we did with Downpour and just fully adopting just like community content. So yeah, Watcher was different because now this is actually like another project that Video Cult is involved in.
I guess part of that with Video Cult being involved with it is with Video Cult being so few people. A lot of people just say James and Noir. In this case, how much did each of the people of Video Cult really help with Watcher? Is kind of my curiosity. I don't know how much you can say as it is. It did seem like War wasn't as present, if I'm not wrong, compared to how much James was part of it.
Yeah, I would say they still were working on Airframe Ultra the whole time that Watcher was in development. So Video Cult was already split among two projects. And again, being a very small team, that kind of it's hard to have such a small team working on two projects at once. So yeah, I would say Watcher was definitely a James project. Yor was mostly working on Airframe Ultra at that time. But yeah, James had a lot of involvement in it. He worked on a lot of the lore. He worked on pretty much like most of the music tracks, the audio. He oversaw. He worked alongside Dell and the other artists to bring all the background illustrations and the cutscenes, and yeah, there's a lot.
Well, and what's been very interesting is the Watcher's gotten a lot of post-release support as well.
Yeah.
Just to give some context, so I'm on my second run of the Watcher. I got both the original endings, and now I'm on the two that were added post-launch. And realizing just how much content has been put in since then has been blowing my tiny mind. I guess, is that a reflection of just how well how well the Watcher has been doing, or is that there was just more story to tell?
I guess there's just more story to tell. I think Watcher was another campaign, I guess, similar to Downpour that certainly had its fair share of scope creep. But I think all the, even though Watcher ended up getting released in two halves, the new endings that came out in the newer update, those endings were still planned like from the beginning. So it wasn't just like something we came up with recently to just like tack on there.
Okay. Well, yeah, and I agree with our chat-based individuals. The Watcher is enormous. The Prince of Rot ending, by the time I finally clocked that in, I think I was creeping towards like 50, 60 hours.
Yeah.
And I know I don't play games quick, but don't.
No, that's just how Watcher is.
Well, you know what's also interesting as well is that the Watcher is simultaneously contained and separate. At least last time I sat down with it, you know, it is not another chapter in the Moon and Peb story.
Yeah,
it is very much its own. And I know that threw a lot of people off at the beginning. I mean, I bloody love the Watcher, so.
The prologue to the campaign is supposed to be kind of like a red herring. It's supposed to make you think that it's going to be your typical Rainworld campaign, and then eventually it throws you into something completely different, and you're like, oh, this isn't just another Downpour campaign.
Yeah, because like, no, and that makes perfect sense. If you're starting a Watcher, then you have spent a lot of time with Rainworld. You know, again, I know I'm stating the obvious for the recording, if you will, but when Rainworld dropped, there was the Survivor, and then one of the critiques of Rainworld at launch was that it was too hard. So Video Cult turns around and says, hey, here's easy mode, you can play as the monk. As we would then later learn, the monk was a separate campaign and part of the overarching story. You know, oh, the hunter, that's just score attack time, that's just Hunk in Resident Evil 4. You're just tofu, baby. You're just tofu. Nah, just kidding. It's the most tragic and heartbreaking of all of the campaigns.
Yeah.
Like, by the time you even boot the Watcher, you have spent so much of your life in this world. Sorry, I feel like I'm the voice of the stating of the obvious tonight.
No, you're good.
But it's interesting to know that the Watcher had as much pre-planned as it did. Sorry, Ice, you go.
I actually have a lot of questions that we can get over at one point. There's also the questions I'm always unsure what is okay to ask, as it is. I've kind of been going in the Watcher. I had a little bit of thought into Downpour. Is what kind of the... How did it feel actually? Well, one thing I noticed, at least within my community, is that when launching Downpour, it brought in a lot of new people, but some of the older people may not be as receptive to it, or at least what Downpour did was a lot different in how I would say Downpour is more character-based. It cared about the stories of the characters, while the base game was a bit more world-based. I guess how do you feel about that distinction, and maybe how some people didn't expect that when Downpour released? Of course, Watcher kind of, some would say, is a mix of both. I'm not sure what the best way to describe it is.
No, I got it. Yeah, I would say with the Watcher, I guess the target audience for it was definitely veteran Rainworld players. It's definitely not meant to be your first campaign, and yeah, I think the feeling we were trying to go for is, how do we take these players that have like hundreds and hundreds of hours in Rainworld, and how do we give them that feeling again that they got the first time they played the game, of just being really lost and really confused and just having to figure out the whole world and whole ecosystem all over again from scratch. Like, how do we give them that original feeling that they had? So I think that was kind of our big goal for the Watcher, was kind of reinvigorating those veteran players' like original experience with Rainworld.
And there's
had a
nothing
thought
that the Watcher
there.
inspires more than that moment of, huh, that thing looks cute. Is that a friend? Is that going to kill me? Oh, it killed me.
Yeah.
That is a great part of it. Yes. So I'm not sure best time to ask her how to word it. Well, one thing I kind of was thinking was, for a little bit of time, I was also there helping with some testing, so I got to see some things maybe not everyone else gets to see. And part of me wants to ask questions. Part of me is like, if you can't answer, that's also fine, because I don't remember what is okay.
Sure.
There was... It felt like, when it was on the Acapara side of testing, it felt like you had to... Just from how it felt when I was playing through it and all the different versions, it felt like you had to rebuild the game just to try to get all of the mods and remix together. Like, sometimes things that were okay were suddenly breaking. Was that a really difficult part, to try to get all of that come together and remix specifically in Steam Workshop to get that?
Yeah.
I guess I'm not sure what that involves on that. Especially.
That's a really good question. So I guess to give an analogy, like, imagine you're building like a Jenga tower, and while the tower is very short, like it's very easy to keep it stable. But obviously, the taller you build the tower, it's going to start getting wobbly and like fall over very easily. So I kind of feel like that's how the process of making a game is, as it progressively gets more and more complicated. So we already know like how gigantic Downpour is. So already by the time we stitched Downpour and all these expedition mode, Jolly Co-op, and all these other things onto Rainworld, like, the game's massive. So So already at that point, the game was admittedly very unstable and like hard to get bug free. So I think the decision to then like build another like Watcher size expansion onto that foundation definitely was a challenge. It was already like a not very secure foundation that we just added a bunch more onto it. So in the most recent Art Month stream, we announced that going forward for like the next big Rainbow project we're going to be working on, instead of releasing it as a DLC, it's still gonna be the same concept, but we're planning to release it as a standalone executable instead of being just like another expansion DLC to the existing Rain world.
Are we allowed to talk about this? It's this. You said it was already announced on the stream.
It was, yeah. I mean,
My brother in video games. Sorry, my brethren in video games.
Yes.
Rain World 2 confirmed?
I wouldn't call it Rain World 2, but it's going to be another expansion, like Downpour and the Watcher, just not released in the form of a DLC, just for that reason, because just adding more and more onto this existing framework is getting too much to maintain. So we kind of want to build up this new like solid foundation, and in that analogy of like the Jenga tower, like let's build a new Jenga tower from scratch instead of just stacking the existing one taller and taller.
No, I'm giving myself a little sparkly sticker for not screeching a house down.
But yes.
Okay.
Yes. More Reynolds content confirmed.
From a dev standpoint, modding is incredibly complicated because the Jenga tower analogy is very, very true. When you're making a game, you always inherit legacy debt. The blocks are sometimes put in really weird positions because that's just how it had to be done at the time. Modding is trying to rebuild the Jenga tower, but you cannot move any of the original pieces, and you want to put more different blocks on top. You know, you have been given a Jenga tower, and you are trying to make a train set work on top of it.
Exactly.
You know, that is a huge challenge. And like, sorry, Rain World 2? Rain World 2. Okay.
I mean, maybe this is also in the... Because I find that really interesting. I think that's a great idea to have it be a separate thing. Something I always thought in mind, and this isn't necessarily what you're doing. It sounds like it's specifically Rain World. Some of the interesting mods that I've seen recently is where it's not Rain World. Like someone created VVV, I think that's how many V's it is, in Rain World.
That's awesome.
Just how that worked, I thought works really well. Just the base framework of what mechanically Rain World is. If you can get that so it's not a giant Jenga tower that has to topple over because it's a million miles high, that sounds like it's really great.
Hey,
yeah.
Game dev is not about why, it's about why not. Why not make 5 nights at Slugcats?
Exactly.
Okay, so Aeon had a question that I think is a really good one, which is, was there any particular piece of the Watcher that you were uniquely proud of, more as like an engine flex, more as like a I can't believe we made the game do this flex?
I'm really partial to the new sentient rot stuff, where the rot like spreads through the world and starts infecting the rooms. Just the idea of the way the rooms like transform and like kind of like procedurally rot themselves and like add new objects and entities into the rooms dynamically. I think that's very different than anything that's been in Rain World before. And on a technical level, it's impressive that it's something that is doable with the Rain World engine.
Well, and of all the things that have been added to Rain World post-launch, it's one of the most organic, which fits so wonderfully with this feeling of a living ecology. Sorry, and I guess this is more for like the Rain World fan than anything. The other thing that's always worth noting is what seems very easy to implement is often a nightmare. and what seems like a nightmare to add to a game is sometimes just like shruggable. Like the difficulty of implementation does not necessarily denote its complexity when you're playing it. So
it is with Watcher. I've definitely noticed a lot of unique interaction things, because in some cases you can kind of see it's like, oh, they shifted around some things, or if it's a new creature, it's there. But it feels like a lot of stuff is just mechanically is much different. With the portals existing,
Yeah.
I don't know how insane that was for you, if that was a nightmare thing. I know that had to change in a few different ways.
That one was very insane just because, I guess, from the scope creep. So I think the original vision for the warp points was very simple, but we kept adding new types of warp points or new ways that the warp points can be used or created. Or, I mean, if you played the Watcher, you know how crazy the warp points get. So yeah, we had to refactor the warp point code like 100 times, and the current version of it is like incomprehensibly complicated.
Viking Blonde hasn't seen one of the things talking with that, so I'll try not to say it too much, but I know the rot stuff definitely isn't too good.
I am desperate for loot, so I'm going to step away from the earphones for just a second. So if you want to talk about it, you are weapons free, and I'll be back in just a sec.
Sure.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm going to wait till he visually isn't there. It looks like he's not there. Okay. Hello. With the Weaver, there's a few things I kind of want to say while he's kind of not there immediately. One I'll probably bring up when he's back, because I kind of want to hear what he thinks about. Weaver closing up portals, I thought was really interesting. I always kind of thought something like that would happen. I like how that works, especially with before portals kind of just, you'd make one and then they'd just be there forever, more or less. And they'd go away after a few cycles, I think, or if you made another one. I'm forgetting the exact way that works.
Yeah, they expire eventually.
Yes. Okay. But I thought that was interesting. But
yeah, the Weaver ones are interesting too, because I think we had to kind of come up with creative ways that the player can't just soft-lock themselves from just deleting all the warp points in the game.
Yes. And then I'll talk about the kind of spiral thing, and the actual full ending of Watcher while he's not here. I kind of also want to know, with the things added with the recent update, you had like a small update that added a few things. I forget what it was called. He made stuff jellyfish, and there's like a tree or something. I haven't seen that stuff yet. What was the kind of the main thing with those? If I'm not wrong, are those more aesthetic, giving kind of pointing people towards things? I know there's like a weaver spider thing that I haven't seen personally yet.
Yeah, I think the ripple trees, the ripple jellies, the ripple spider, the little ripple spawn eggs or whatever. Those are all part of the same general mechanic, which was that we wanted to try to find new ways to kind of guide the player a little more. So I think that was, we didn't want it to be too handholdy, but I think there was a balance we were trying to find there, because in the original Watcher releases, we wanted to make the game as labyrinth and confusing as possible to navigate. But I think we went a little bit too far in that direction, and there's a lot of critique about just it being a little bit too overwhelming and confusing to like figure out where to go and like what to do. So we've been trying to kind of balance that out to still have it feel labyrinth, but also have a number of mechanics to kind of guide the player along a little bit more. So kind of all these mechanics are based around these kind of void eggs that you could, or ripple eggs that you can find around the world. And as you collect them, various things happen. You'll get like passive like void spawn that appear in ripple spawn that appear in the regions and kind of are like swimming around, and they'll swim in the direction of warp points or spinning top locations. And then there's different ways to trigger the visibility of those void spawn, ripple spawn. And the ripple tree is like a new way that we added where like you can as you collect more of the ripple eggs, these like ripple trees like grow in size, and then when you touch them, it gives you for a certain duration. You could see the like ripple spawn in the region more clearly and see like the paths you're supposed to follow to make progress.
Okay, that's very cool. It looks like Viking Blonde may exist here, so we can't fully talk about the one last thing. I don't know if you do exist, Viking Blonde, but yes, there's maybe we'll get another chance in a bit. There's one thing I kind of did want to ask, which kind of goes back to Downpour. I kind of got the feeling with some of the ending New Watcher stuff as well. Correct me if I'm wrong or not. I believe, especially with the stuff in Downpour that you have, it seems like you have a decent bit of inspiration from Fez. Is it possible you could talk about Fez a little bit? Or how you've taken Fez, or specifically the thing in Downpour that I'm talking about? Maybe I don't go into super detail, because we don't want to talk about the character as much.
Do I need to step away for a second again?
No,
you're fine. This is like an Easter egg thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's too much Fez inspiration beyond just that Easter egg.
Okay.
Yeah, that was actually just something very random that I added, but it was like an Easter egg I wanted to add to one of my game projects ever since I played Fez like way back in the day. So I think this was just something I always wanted to do in any one of my game development projects, and I just finally had an excuse to do it here in Downpour. And I thought Rubicon would be a fitting area to place that, just because there's some overlap, I think, in the themes of Rubicon versus the themes that are presented in Fez. So I thought it'd be a good thematic fit.
Well, it's actually it's an interesting thing because, I mean, Fez came from a different time. But if we look at it just as a piece of art, it is a very, very simple title to understand on the surface, that its story is told through environmentals and ultimately as complex a deep dive as you want to go. Like, I mean, just to both chats, like, shout out to everybody here who had to piece together the world of Rainworld from pearls in those early days.
Yeah.
Like, in those early days, we were sold a game where you're just a little cute creature surviving, trying to find your family. But actually, it was the story of, supercomputers and their desperate search for ascension in the face of that which they had done for others. The very world of Rainworld is built on the skeletal corpse of a civilization long dead. And to find out about it is to, go deep into the paint. I think the parallels between Fez and OG Rainworld are very, very easy to understand. It's just Fez's puzzle systems and things like that were in service of what we would probably call more like ARG style storytelling now.
Yeah, I agree.
The difference being is like Fez had a much simpler entry point. It's Mario with a little Mario guy. But you can turn the world around.
Yeah.
Sorry,
a lot of things.
Bring that one up.
That was the thing I wanted to bring up when you were here, because I felt it wouldn't say too much. It's kind of with how Fez works. There's like a few moments where it's like, the big change happens where actually everything was completely different the whole time, and you could do this thing. And Rainworld does that in a few different cases. I feel like how through some of the things you added with me trying not to directly say things, the end game kind of Watcher stuff kind of felt like that. I don't know how or what exactly you did for some of the final sequences, but it seems like there's a lot that went on. At least it feels much different. It's also seeing a lot of interesting stuff. I don't know how much interesting sequences, also interesting technology. I believe Downpour had some stuff of this where people would make Blender files and put them into Downpour. There was also stuff I don't know if you used it in Watcher. There was the really old things where someone made a 3D shape that would rotate in.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was ever used. I saw someone demo something a long
I
time
mean, there's
ago,
definitely
but
one 3D shape that rotates in the Watcher, and it made me fucking cry.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to give shout out to Angamata because he made like all the crazy visual effects both in Downpour and Watcher. He did the I don't want to give too many Watcher spoilers, but for Downpour, for example, he did all the blizzard and snow world visuals. He did the crazy cutscene when you like insert the rarefaction cell into like Moon's heart and you get like all the crazy effects.
Oh yeah.
Um, he did all the crazy visuals that are going on in Rubicon and those really cool like glowing orbs that you see in Outer Expanse. Pretty much anywhere you see a really cool visual effect in the rain world, it's probably Angamata that made it.
That's way cool.
Yeah.
that's very nice.
Sorry, just casting eyes into to chat wise. I will say the Raid World's true cinema, absolute cinema memes will forever be funny. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, I just Seven Eve's Reign, just adding the story of Rain World goes as deep as you want it to go, which I think is something that is definitely catnip for a very, very enthusiastic community.
Yeah.
Okay, we didn't miss
I
that.
feel like Rain World's storyline is made like just ambiguous enough that there's like a number of different valid ways to interpret it, which lets people be pretty flexible in their headcanons.
I know actually it's kind of say it. I'm not sure how. I think I know what you're talking about because I think I've spoken to them. There's someone else that is around the Rain World, Angalata, which I do not think it is them. So I was a little confused at first when you were saying it. I'm not sure if you mean or how the name is spelled, but that's a separate thing. While I'm thinking about things.
Okay, so fun question. Is there anything you've snuck in the last two DLCs that people haven't found?
I don't think so. I was actually very surprised how quickly people discovered all the Easter eggs in Downpour because I thought there were some very well hidden ones, but people found them very quickly. But I guess that's just the nature of modern day gaming.
There was
especially when there's a
one.
yeah, that one probably took the longest. Yeah, the expedition Easter egg. Yeah, especially with how big Rain World's community is. There's so many people playing the game, they're gonna find that stuff.
And this is more just for me than for anybody else. So I don't know if you've talked about this on, official dev streams and things like that. Is there anything planned? Is there anything else planned to be added to the Watcher? I feel like I'm a couple steps behind everybody else.
I don't know how much I can say on that, but
If you can't talk about it, that's entirely fine.
I'll say don't expect anything substantial, but there might be like a couple more like bug fix patches or something like that.
Makes sense. There's always something that happens. Oh yeah, speaking of working with specific people, really interesting. With Watcher, you got on a lot of map creators especially to help out with a lot of maps. I don't know most of them. I know K-Pro brought a lot of, I believe that's how you say their name, brought a lot of the Aether Ridge stuff. Now, I know a lot of people feel certain ways when it came to it existing in the Watcher. I still love to see it. I still thought it was a lot easier than its original installment a long time ago.
Yeah.
How was working and getting those mods in? Also, yes, for history for Viking Blonde, one of the really big region mods, one of the first ones that was made before Downpour or anything, that was also really difficult and had a lot of things to it, was the Aether Ridge, and Cape Buro also added just so much to it. It's probably the largest singular region. Even then, just a lot of what Watcher is a lot of just chopped up Aether Ridge, just because of how many different sub-regions it had and different things going on.
Okay.
Which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah.
So how was working with people, making portals go places to new areas?
Yeah, that's a
There are
very
7 Aether Ridges.
that's a very interesting question. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love Aether Ridge, and it's a very historic, iconic Rainworld region, modded Rainworld region. And I know James always had a fascination with Aether Ridge. I think even going back to Downpour when we were like deciding what mods we wanted to port to consoles and include in Downpour, I think James really had his eyes on wanting to get Aether Ridge in there somehow. So we finally got that in there with Watcher. But yeah, it was definitely a bit of a challenge to get it to work with Watcher, just because of the way the campaign is designed. So actually, like going even all the way back to like when we were first planning out the Watcher campaign, our kind of concept for the war points was we wanted to have the Watcher campaign basically be a collection of a very large number of very small-sized regions. Like I was referring to them as micro regions. James was referring to them as set piece regions. But the general idea was just you'd have all these port points just connecting a whole bunch of different places, but any of those individual places would be pretty small in size. So you would just constantly be hopping from place to place. So that was kind of the original design philosophy for how we were going to structure the Watcher campaign. So Aether Ridge was kind of an interesting one to try to make work with that, because I mean, you know, Aether Ridge is absolutely gigantic. So for a campaign whose design philosophy was to keep the regions as small as possible, it's very hard to adapt this absolutely gigantic region. So I think in the early Watcher prototypes, our first attempt at making Aether Ridge work was just chopping it up until each of the individual regions was like the size we wanted for the micro regions. But doing it that way, we ended up with like 14 different Aether Ridge regions, which is just ridiculous. Yep. And like in the early prototypes, just testing it out, like Aether Ridge obviously completely dominated the experience when you have 14 different Aether Ridge regions. Yeah. So then it was yeah, so then it was kind of a kind of back and forth kind of balance of like, how can we make this work better? So we start kind of piecing the Aether Ridge regions back together in the most cohesive way we could. And we ended up with, I think, 6 different Aether Ridge regions in the final Watcher. But even at that point, with it being divided into 6 pieces, each of the individual pieces was still pretty big, like way bigger than we necessarily wanted the region sizes in the Watcher to be. So then I guess all the design decisions from them was also trying to adapt things to still make it not make it feel like it dominated the experience, but also not make it feel like it was too out of place either. So yeah, I think of all the regions, Aether Ridge is definitely the hardest one to adapt to the campaign.
Okay.
Definitely. I definitely know a lot of people that are like, I gotta live eternally in Aether Ridge. I could never leave. It's definitely, I like the idea. It clearly was a hard thing, because I could feel that you wanted to do that smaller areas, but then it's like, Aether Ridge, the one that's actually called Aether Ridge feels like it's the largest region, if I'm not wrong.
It probably
Did you intend... What was, say, your ideal size for a region? When it first came out, there was, I think it was Sunlit Port, the smallest region.
That was,
I assume, because you changed that, I assume that was too small for what you were thinking, or were you thinking originally something along that size?
No, I think originally I was thinking the regions would be around that size. I was thinking they'd all be probably like drainage system sized or smaller.
Okay.
But I think there's also a lot of pushback from the level designers as well, because once the regions get down to that size where they're like really, really tiny, it's kind of hard to make interesting region layouts or make like the pathing through the region all that interesting.
Yep.
So there's also kind of a balance there that we want the regions to be small enough that the campaign doesn't feel really tedious and bloated, but also big enough that the regions are still interesting and varied to traverse.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And also the thing about the Watcher campaign is that it is those kind of snippets, those microclimates, as you're hurtling between places. What was interesting about Downpour was that it was the world expanded. Sorry, because I was thinking what to show. I know most of us know Rainworld pretty well by now, but I've had the varying trailers putting up, and the thing that I still think really cemented how well the post Akapura Rainworld world, for lack of a better term, has been is, the region outside of the city. Getting to go to, what will eventually become kind of like the Slugcat tribal home. Being able to found that and make that as canonical or non-canonical as the person wishes. But it was the world we knew expanded well, and I don't know, there's been a level of quality with Downpour onwards that's been really consistent. So it's interesting that the Watcher was this, I don't know, tasting menu of other mod projects. Like learning the history of Aether Ridge now is fascinating. It's nice to know that there was a path of pain all our own.
Yeah. I mean, people sometimes call the Watcher campaign a modding showcase, but I mean the modded regions, they were only supposed to be like a small part of the campaign. There's a lot of new Watcher exclusive regions that were added as well. But it was kind of meant to be a showcase of the world. That's kind of the idea. Another one of the core ideas behind the Watcher campaign is with the war points, it's supposed to travel you far away from Pebbles and Moon's facility and let you see like a sampling of all these different random places far away, like spread throughout the wider world of Rain World.
Yeah,
So kind of you're so familiar with Pebbles and Moon's superstructure from the original campaigns, but we kind of wanted to show that hey, there's a lot more to this world too. So let us give you like a little sampling of a bunch of other stuff that's out there far away, like the outer expanses of Rain World.
Yeah, well, and also Downpour's thematics are all based around the echoes. The other big part of the story. And again, like we talked about this earlier, if you just play this as, the fun Slugcat adventure in Slugcat Land, then you get the full experience, but the story has so much to it. And one of those being, the creatures who couldn't let go, not quite ascended, not quite corporeal, but somewhere in between. And it's such a little thing. You only really see a snippet of them if you do like a full OG clear, as you all well know. And seeing this world from their perspective is a fascinating jumping off point.
Yeah.
Sorry, more of a long old statement than a question, but it's just, we've talked about this a lot, that Rainworld does such a good job of eschewing the standard, like, post-fantasy morality, oh, you are trapped in this realm because you are evil and bad. Rainworld's like, nah, this person could not ascend because they were really proud of making really good crops for everybody. This person is a teacher, and they're so proud of the good that they did and the people that they helped. They can't quite let go. Like, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
As part of that, well, I have some relevant to Rainworld things, and then I have completely not relevant at all things to ask, I suppose. With developing games, so also it's kind of a question of how it was for you for both Downpour and Watcher, maybe Watcher specifically in this case. Also, I kind of want to Downpour, 'cause it's been a while. But
Yeah.
what is the thing to you that is most interesting to work on, or the thing that you really want to do? Are you caring more about the world building, getting the features to work, having characters be certain ways? What is the thing that you kind of grab onto? Um,
I
with the
think
game
for
development?
I think for me it's a combination of the world building and the gameplay mechanics. I think as a game developer, just the satisfying thing for me is just being able to create your own world and then get to actually like enter into that world you created and physically like or virtually interact with it. So I guess just those two aspects of building the world that you're going to explore and then also creating the mechanisms in which you can interact with that world that you created.
Yes. It is always nice, especially with a lot of the Downpours of characters, especially. You can notice that. I always wondered.
With Downpour, I wanted to do something. I know some people wanted just more Survivor-esque campaigns,
Yes.
but yeah, definitely with Downpour, I wanted to do something very different with each of the campaigns.
With more powers becomes the world goes by a lot faster. It definitely has a
Game
much
needs
different
more
feeling.
shucks. 0-10.
But it makes it interesting as well, which is
Sorry.
also
Apologies for interrupting. It's just one of my lot saying Rainworld needs more sharks. It absolutely the fuck does not. Don't encourage this. I just encountered the anglerfish for the first time this Tuesday.
That's terrible.
So thank you for reinforcing a fear that I haven't had to encounter since the Outer Wilds. So cheers for that one.
we don't go down there. We don't
Now
go
I know
down there
why.
in Fungus Land.
Okay, just to give you all some context, like, as I said, I binged The Watcher at drop. So all of the new areas and new changes and things and the bits that I missed, I haven't encountered since then. So I'm in this new region, I've got my bubble weed, I'm like, you know what, I can swim down, I know what I'm about. And in the shadows, I start seeing the yellow light pulsing, and I've never seen it before. And then the yellow light goes red, and a nightmarish bastard fish comes out from the... it had been hiding in the shadows of this underwater structure. I'm not saying I screeched, but I screeched.
Yeah, they're pretty awful.
It is very interesting to see. I don't know if it's like... Well, it's another enemy that just completely deletes the player character, if I'm not wrong. Which I thought was interesting.
Well, it doesn't take you out for tea and bloody crumpets.
Well, usually your
Swim up
body
and
still
go,
exists
"Oh, hey,
for
would you like
everyone
to
else.
something?" I mean, you do exist in several pieces in an anglerfish stomach.
Part of me...
I'm proud that I did manage to break the game a little bit at launch, at Watcher launch, of managing to get one time, I got a Leviathan caught in a warp portal.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's the point where I peaked. You know, you can take the boy out of QA, but you can't take the QA out of the boy.
Nice.
It is always... There was a lot of stuff you could break with portals, and then Andrew took them all away. No, just kidding.
It's fine. We know that you hate us.
It
and
works
that's fine.
nice.
You know, you don't want us teleporting Leviathans into the middle of, like, I don't know, the desert, and that's fine. It's okay. You can just say you hate us.
We still have some things we can figure out, but it is hard to deal with kind of figuring out where you're gonna go. The seeding is... I'm not sure how much people have dealt with it, because I haven't done as much with, say, the speedrunning.
For speedrunning, yeah.
Yeah. But people started to figure it out, and it seems interesting. People started yeah, it seemed really neat. That I haven't really messed with Watcher that much, but there's a lot of different things.
I imagine it's very complicated. Just anytime there's RNG manipulation involved, it gets crazy.
In some cases, it's not even manipulation. It's just like, well, let's just see what happens and then do things as I'm kind of seeing it, because a lot of it is still creatures exist. You have to deal with them.
Yeah.
First 20 minutes is going to be crazy. I think some people in the chat would say a lot more if Dreki. I know Shrub's also done a lot.
So I have a fluffy question, and
Fluffy.
again, like to either folks over Longshipian Way or in the iced fortress. Oh, it's not really a fortress; it's a mountaintop, funky hangout. Anyway,
Yes.
if you'll have any questions you want to throw on in, like, hey, we got time. I wanted to ask, what is something that you wanted to implement into Rain World, and Engine said no, because it's always fascinating to hear what systems can't do. You know, like famously, the old Bethesda engine couldn't have trains. Now they did get a hack around that, as everyone famously knows, by having people with hats that made the functioning trains in Fallout 3. But this is something that I find fascinating. What was something you wanted to put in, and the engine said no?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know actually the procedural like rot mechanic that I mentioned earlier, that actually was something that I know James wanted to put in like the original Rain World, but they scrapped. Yeah, that was actually a very old idea that was planned, but they ended up scrapping it just because it seemed too like technically demanding to actually implement something like that.
Then, as someone who spent a lot of time going up and down the wall, can I just say, thank fuck?
Yeah, I can't even imagine what the game would have been like if that was just something in the Survivor campaign.
Yes. You also, and this is in the, if people actually walked around and looked at the, I forget what's called, dev commentary, at least with Downpour, there was the giant abyss spider.
Oh yeah.
It sounded like you weren't sure on how that works. It doesn't sound like it's terribly simple.
Yeah, that one would have been. Yeah, I had an idea for just like a terrifying giant spider creature that could just spawn in pretty much any room in a region that had a bottomless pit. Just randomly, just like hands would like come up from the bottomless pit and snatch you, which would have been awful, but it was a little bit technically difficult to implement, so we scrapped that.
That would be funny.
My question.
Shaded bridge was crazy. Okay, joke, speedrunning stuff also, joke. I think I might have said this before, but also kind of clarify. There's that bridge right at the end of Shaded, right before Shoreline, especially. I think that's where that commentary is. People just die there. And it's not difficult. It's not, it's scary because there's a death pit there. I can't imagine how people reacted if something was actually trying to get them there. Like the first times.
Well, that's
that's a separate thing. I just think about that.
So jumping into the combined chat, I think we covered. I think we covered Caffeine's question earlier on today. Ashlight just wanted to say that to whoever made Challenge 70, I respect you making a hard challenge, but why Undertale coded?
Yeah, after you answer that, I have something to add to it, but...
but I thought it was the real one.
It's actually Toho coded, but yes.
Yes.
If you go far enough down, it's all Toho.
That is kind of the question that I have before we go on to the next question. It sounded like you're really into Toho kind of things. I had someone jokingly ask, what is your favorite Toho character as well, if you have answers for those things.
Yes, I do. It is Kasen. I think Kasen. Or actually Kanako. Kanako would be my favorite. Yes.
And then...
Toho is fascinating. That's another game that has a very active fan community that makes all kinds of stuff, so I'm very interested in it for that reason.
So how involved are you with Toho necessarily? I know you've spoken about it a few times. Is it just something that you play every once in a while, or?
Yeah, I'm not involved in terms of like making stuff. Like I don't make a lot of like fan games or fan projects or anything. But yeah, I definitely consume a lot of the fan works like a lot of it. That's like one of my favorite game
Hey,
series.
does anyone mind if I shout out a friend's game in this conversation before we go back to Rainworld stuff?
No, go for it.
Um,
Absolutely.
if you are a Toho fan, I need to put The Void Reigns Upon Her Heart on your radar if it isn't already.
I think I've heard of that one actually.
Which for some reason only the soundtrack comes up. This is our friend Virals, and they made Toho but Slay the Spire. They've been working on it for like a squillion years. It's really good. But yeah, if you just in case you suddenly had free time and you need another video game in your life, I just thought I'd in this house we shout out the homies and we flash our
Yes.
rainbow tattoos. Those are the rules. Actually, the only reason I don't have more is just money. I was going to get the karma symbols on my hands, a hand tattoo, which you're probably thinking like, Will's just going for some kind of like edgy, like, faux Sanskrit type thing. No, it's so I can remember how many times I need to survive by counting them on my fingers when I have to get through a fucking karma gate. And I will eventually get the other slug cats added to my slug cat tattoo. It's just time and money. Well, money.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Someone in chat now who has a big
questions.
tattoo as well
Yeah.
on their thighs, which is Zera, which is very cool. So it's all of the karma symbols. They've been thinking about the
incredible.
Watcher ones, but I'm not sure if Era has actually gone through with that.
So I got this Rainworld tat back before the additional endings and Downpour.
Wow.
And it was our canonical ending where all three slug cats meet up and they're all safe and happy and fine and nothing bad happens. The end.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. It's the real.
Yeah. Doing the hunter without knowing what was going to happen. Ooh. Oh, actually, that was something I did want to mention. To whoever implemented that feature where you can encounter the hunter after the hunter's end, if you've gone for the bad ending of the hunter, to whoever came up with that idea, fuck you personally. That is heartbreaking. Okay, but yeah, we've got some good questions coming in. So the Shrub from Tomorrow wanted to ask, how long did it take to carve that epic rot pumpkin?
Oh, I forgot I even posted that. That took a couple of nights. It was a fun project.
And 70s Rain did have an interesting question, which is, do you ever miss working on smaller projects? Like early mod stuff, proof of concept stuff.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I would say I'm kind of an interesting. All right. Let me start over. So I would say with a lot of people that get into modding, it's usually the other way around. So I find a lot of people modding is their first experience or their first kind of dabbling into the world of game development, and then they eventually graduate beyond that into like making their own games. And I think like I was the opposite. So I started making my own games from scratch for many years, and then later on I started dabbling into modding, and I found modding a lot more fun and a lot more fulfilling than making games from scratch. So
It has its unique challenges, but it is all
Yeah.
it's nice when someone's done a lot of the bullshit first.
that's why I like it, exactly.
The challenge
Because-
of modding is like you're working on top of a fully existing game.
Yeah, with modding you can just jump straight to the fun stuff of developing games, but when you make a game from scratch, there's so much very boring, tedious overhead you need to develop first. And by the time you finish developing that, you're already burnt out by the time you get to the point where you can make the fun stuff.
Definitely get that. I'm going to grab a question before it goes terribly far away, which I have no idea what Shrub is necessarily asking, which was, How did development change when working on source versus decompilation, which I don't know entirely.
Oh, it was no, I know what it means, and it was so much nicer. So when you're modding a game like Rainworld, you don't have access to the source code. Like Rainworld is not an open source game, so you have to use certain tools called like decompilers, which kind of try to reconstruct the source from whatever information it has available. But you get a very incomplete view, and so when you're working on mods, it's a lot more challenging because you're working with kind of like a very abstracted, somewhat encrypted, like very esoteric kind of view of the source code, and it makes it so much harder.
You end up with
But
a lot of
as
like essentially black boxes, like
yeah,
parts that you can't access and you're not quite sure what it affects, but you know you need it.
yeah, but yeah, now that I'm actually like an official developer on Renown, I do have access to the source code, and obviously all the work that I'm doing for these official games is working with the actual source code, and it is so much nicer to work with it.
As an aside to an aside, one of my favorite examples of this was a particular game where you could add new weapons and new units, but all of the weapons and units were in a table, but the table was hella encrypted, so you had to just guess.
That's crazy.
So the whole mod community had to work out and basically reverse engineer what was in the table, where it was, and like, because if you overwrote one thing, the table wouldn't work, so all the units and all the weapons would fail.
Oh my god, that's brutal.
Yeah. I imagine the. Sorry. Bear with me a second. Sorry about that.
Ceased. Oh, no. Okay.
Well, and also, to my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, like, Rainworld's a homebrew engine. I shouldn't really say homebrew. Like, Joao made that shit work from the jump.
Yeah.
And that means that there is no there's no standardization around how it is created. You know, if you want to mod a Unity game, there's things you can do. You want to mod something that was made in, UE4? All right, we know how to crack that shit open. But Rainworld? Dude made that in his basement with a box of scraps.
Exactly.
Backwards.
I mean, Rainbow technically is a Unity game, but it uses almost nothing that Unity provides. It's all custom. It was all built from the ground up.
Indeed.
And fun fact too, like if you really know the history of Rainworld, the very early prototypes of Rainworld before he started using Unity, he was building everything Rainworld related inside like a spreadsheet program.
Oof.
Even the official level editor, which is part of why people say that one's so brutal to work with, is that official level editor that all the modders use and that we use to make the levels for the game. That also was developed in a spreadsheet language, which is very impressive. I don't know how he managed that.
A lot of math, it sounds like, in a not the easiest way, but a way that works.
Also, like, I guess I can't imagine anyone here doesn't know about it, but if you get the chance, look up Joao's GDC talks on how Rainworld works, because, like, that, if you have even a cursory understanding of how video games are made, it will break your brain, like the good way. Because that was the thing, is like, as I mentioned earlier, like, I knew James and Lydia from their music days. I shouldn't say music days like they don't do music anymore, but like I knew them from when they were, performing as Bri Primate. And so I got to meet Joao and Del at GDC, because we were hosting a mixer, and I was like, yo, you're here with a game? Like, yeah, with Rainworld stuff. I'm like, oh shit, come tell me about Rainworld. I got a bar tab. And there's this thing which happens when you talk to programmers, coders, predominantly like engine coders and technical artists and stuff like that, when you quickly realize that they speak some kind of strange wizard magic that is inherently not of this world, and that they craft existence from math numbers that they use from rocks we tricked with lightning. It was apparent very, very quickly that Brainworld was operating on another level from everything else in its weight category. And so it's so fascinating that even something as complex as it was able to have a really healthy mod ecosystem, and that's a huge proponent of what kept it going and has now hurtled it into, cult stardom.
Yeah, I'm very curious to know what your thinks about everything that's happened with Rainworld, because I'm sure when he originally developed this project, like, he could have never imagined what the game would eventually turn into.
Yeah. Once they're done jamming on Airframe, we'll have to steal them for like a big old banter and catch up.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's fascinating to just see how it's unfurled. And Aeon, thank you for grabbing the link to the GDC talk. That's really cool. Because I know out of the three of us, like, I'm coming at this from a very, very different perspective. Like, I've always been a lover of games, but I love the industry around them, and so many times I encounter a brilliant game that has been left or neglected or ignored, and that was nearly the case with Rainworld, right?
Yeah.
There are so many games that are under Adult Swim's care that were just left to languish and die.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah. We're not sitting here having a big community cross banter about Super House of the Dead Ninjas. You know what I mean?
That was a fun game.
Yeah. Well, Robot Unicorn Attack is just gone. It's just gone. Sorry, I drove this completely off topic once again.
Well,
as is
kind of on that vein of things, when Rainworld was still in that drought of, the Switch port may release, or that's kind of the Switch port's already existed and nothing else really happening, we're not really getting anything else beyond that. It was still addressing we even got that. I don't know how that happened necessarily. But how did you feel about, although seeing the exponential growth of the community and otherwise, how did you feel about how Rainworld was going to go around that period where you're getting closer to finishing the game, or around like 75-50%, but it's clear the game might just not exist past the mod that you're creating? How did that feel then? Did you feel like, this is the last thing for Rainworld we're doing, potentially? Am I okay with that? If kind of that thought process. Maybe I'm not exactly hitting what I'm thinking about, but do you kind of get what I mean, or could say anything?
Are you referring to, like, when More Slugguts was still just a mod?
So when More Slugguts was still just a mod, there was no clear indication that Rainworld was ever going to come out from Adult Swim. Yeah. How did it feel to you to continue working on it, knowing that Rainworld might not really go anywhere, if that makes sense?
Oh, I see. I guess there is some level of, like, I guess this is something like anyone would feel that works on a very long project. It was just kind of this feeling of, we put like a lot of work into the More Slugguts mod. We've been working on it for like 4 years. And just releasing it as like a free mod to this on like a somewhat obscure modding website or something. There's definitely kind of a bit of, I don't want to say disappointment, but it's just like, to put that much work into a project and not be sure if there's even going to be that many people who end up playing it or getting to experience it.
Yeah.
mean, there is also the flip side, and I'm not saying this to be a knob end, but Rainworld not receiving, crazy repeat updates means that the game itself is quote unquote stable. There is a version that everyone has, and so that any mods created on that, you can kind of build this scaffold framework around it. What you were talking about earlier about the difference between attempting to decompile and actually being given source. Shout out to the Fallout London team who spent nearly a decade building their own little doop-de-doo apples and pears Fallout game with modded tools within, only with the intent of releasing it for free, despite the amount of work they put in. And then Bethesda, out of nowhere, is like, we just updated the game. Fucking broke all your shit. Good luck.
Yeah. Or I really feel for like the people that work on like fan games, and then their games get like cease and desisted at some point. Like that's gonna be horrible.
That is, however, if you're making a fan game, all right, then please tell your friends on this one. If you're making a fan game, don't tell anyone until it's done.
Yeah.
Just shut up. Sorry, I know that sounds really mean, but I can tell you this. Video game companies don't actually want to shut down fan games. We fucking love them. The problem is, the way that copyright exists is that if a fan game is released and it has a huge fanfare and starts getting masses of attention, you have to shut it down to be seen as defending your game, your IP. If the whole thing comes out quietly and is then seeded around multiple sites, and then you have to say, sorry, you got to get rid of that, then you've done your legal due diligence, and it can percolate around communities like Pokemon Uranium. But if you go to major sites and major YouTubers and you drum up shite loads of interest and shite loads of attention before it's come out, then you'll get shut down before you can put it out there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's very true.
If you want to make a good fan game, shut the hell up. Sorry. It's been one of my bugbears because, yeah. Now, Shrub from Tomorrow had another question, which was, when updates come out, how much consideration is put towards modding? Do you try and avoid updating core functions? How much of that is taken into consideration with your development process?
There's some consideration put into it because, I mean, obviously, we've released all these modding tools. Obviously, we want to support the modding community as much as possible. But there's also like trying to make your updates 100% compatible with all like 4,000 Rainworld mods that exist out there. That's not really feasible. So there's kind of a balance between trying not to do things on purpose that like you're really sure is going to break a lot of mods, but at the same time, like if doing something in a way that's going to be super compatible with a lot of mods is going to be really technically difficult to implement versus doing something in a way that may break a few mods but is much easier to implement. Like sometimes we have to make that choice just to be like time conscious and not make the updates like too make the timeline for releasing the updates like reasonable for us, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah.
The only mod that has been broken that I take umbrage with is the press X to meow on Steam has not been updated to work with current Downpour. Like, I'm not pointing fingers, but where's my meow? But yes, to those of you who have just joined us, myself and Ice are chatting with Andrew from Video Cult. We're talking Rainworld, we're talking Downpour, we're talking The Watcher. If you got any questions about it, come on down. If not, grab yourself a bevy and settle in. We're getting into the weeds. Okay, I can just meow in real life, but it's not the same, and you know it. And yes, okay, the canonical noise of the slug cat is the wah wah. I know. Wah 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 wah. But again, I need that meow.
Alright, I accidentally muted myself in Discord, but I fixed the problem. One thing I did want to bring up was, we have been going for a while. I don't want to feel like you're captive sitting there unable to get water forever, Andrew. If at any point you do need that. Okay.
I got that
You're
water.
surviving. Okay. Because I am starting to feel that a little bit. But I have water too, which is good. Okay. Now I'm forgetting what I was going to say there. But I had some interesting things. I kind of wanted to get some insight on what goes on in development. I know one of the things that was a very obvious thing that a lot of people were like, maybe I don't like how this is, and it got a lot of updates, was the locusts. Was that something you really dealt with a huge amount? And how did, even if you didn't directly deal with that, it definitely seems like that was a slow figuring it out, seeing what works with the community and how people interact with it until finally settling into something that has all the interactions.
Yeah, I wasn't too involved with the development of the locusts. But yeah, I know definitely a challenge with those is that we didn't want to make it so that you could just trivialize them with the camouflage mechanic. But it was also, I think, kind of hard to portray that to the player in a clear way, or like make it make sense why you can't do that.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that was definitely a design challenge to make the Badlands actually be an interesting region without just being able to really easily trivialize it. Which I think that's just a challenge with the camouflage mechanic in general with the Watcher campaign.
A little bit on other things, probably something you dealt more with, although I wasn't sure if this was some of the others dealing with it, was back Downpour, maybe we don't need to specifically say it, Pain Cat, Imv, Enot, whatever we want to call them. One, how did you feel about that? How was having another dating sim, and how much did you actually deal with making that?
I worked a lot on that one. No, I loved working on that campaign. No, I think Inf was basically just our stress release campaign. So I think it was when development was getting too much for us and we just needed something silly to work on, or just stop thinking about the actual serious development work that needs to be done and just take a break for a bit. Yeah, we were just throwing whatever random ideas we had into that campaign, and it raised our spirits and was a lot of very entertaining for us as developers.
Oh yeah, it's definitely. I can't believe how a lot of things are. Exterior, I think, is crazy. I mean, maybe that's just the one that appears out to me. A lot of people have figured out a lot of ways to actually do pretty well. I still think exterior and Sky Islands, the one part of Sky Islands, is really crazy. But
yeah, those are actually, those two in particular are actually just ports of old mods that I made. So actually, when I first joined the Rainworld community, and the modding scene was like super early, the only mods we knew how to make back then were just DevTools mods, just like modifying maps with DevTools. So very early on, there was a group of people who were working on a project to just use DevTools to just add the rot objects to like every region in the game. And so there's a bunch of random modders who were working on that, and I had done the rotted versions of the exterior and the Sky Islands regions. So I just like
gravity.
Yeah. So those two imp regions were just a port of my old mods.
No, it just because I didn't do the Inva campaign until way after Downpour dropped. I was doing a donation drive at the time, and I don't think people understand how sadistic most game devs would be if they could. So I'm just glad you got that kind of, I would say, outlet. But definitely anytime someone has said this game's too easy, you can be like, oh word, oh bet.
Yeah, for sure.
It is definitely a lot of fun that something like that exists. There's definitely just knowing some very particular things about how the game works makes it a lot easier than not everyone would know. The slug pups is also really funny. I forget what I was gonna say. Well, someone was asking about Apple Bread's voice line.
Yeah,
That is Apple Bread. Yeah.
that is Apple Red. Yeah, that was also from that. That was also from that rotted exterior mod that I had made. Apple Bread. Yeah, back then Apple Bread did a stream of him playing through that mod, and it was obviously a very frustrating experience. And yeah, that's just a clip taken from that stream.
So, for people kind of get context, one, if you sit in just the main menu and don't move at all for like a long time, there'll be a voice clip that plays, and it's from one of the first real streamers that consistently played the game, which was Apple Bread, which was a bit before I started doing things and a lot of other people. 'Cause I assume he played basically when the game started as well, given how much he did.
Yeah.
Then.
That same stream is also where the "Thanks Andrew" meme kind of originated from, because he every single time he would die while playing the map, he would just say "Thanks Andrew."
No, Wolvar, we're getting to the deep lore. This is where we're at.
Gotta know the oddly specific things. I want to ask other oddly specific things. Oh, weird oddly specific thing. It's also game development stuff.
Okay.
Well, there's always 1,000 things I'd love to say and do for QA. I always wish I could test more with Brainworld. There's so much that I think is cool, and just small tweaks can make it even more interesting always, but stuff has to stop at a point. One of the things, I don't know if it was you and me going back on, I don't know how much we can really necessarily say on things, but I've kind of said it, was I kept getting past the Guardians. And sending reports. I don't know if you noticed it, but it felt like it was just like, oh, you found a way, I'm going to do a change, and then the change did not work because I found another way, and that went for a while, and then when it was the live, you just couldn't enter it or something. I forget what it was. The live version.
Oh yeah.
Which I thought was really funny that ended up like that.
Yeah. I think in the final remix version, if you just turn the vanilla exploits off, then yeah, it just completely disables that pipe because people were finding a way around it no matter what.
Yep. Yes. So I thought that was funny about that. Yeah, there's always a way, especially when the Guardian's a creature that can be manipulated. Yeah. Now to completely derail everything that I was just saying. With your name being AndrewFM, FM truly meaning Fortnite Master.
Yes.
How far have you gotten in the battle pass in the recent Fortnite season? That is my question. But also, and more importantly, why do you have what is AndrewFM? What does that mean to you? And also, what is your Egg Zero website? Is some questions that I have.
I wish there was a more interesting answer, but yeah, AndrewFM is literally just my initials.
Okay. Makes sense.
For Egg Zero, which is the kind of label I would go by for my indie games that I made. Now when I came up with that name when I was in college, I had like a friend in college who we would make games together. So that was a name we came up with at that time. And
right.
there's also not that much interesting behind the origin of that name. It was just something we thought that sounded cool.
old. I picked it back in the day, and now
It's
I'm
your
cursed
icon.
with it.
Yeah.
I'm with Shrub on this one. It obviously stands for modulated frequencies. Because Andrew AM was taken, or Frogman, because I'm going to say it again, fuck them frogs. Those hateful little bastards.
I just know
it
it
was
was
so bad that I
Ender
stabbed it with a spear.
who
And
always
then
said
everything
Fortnite
changed.
message.
Yeah.
Frogs.
So yeah, again, to those of you who have just joined us, if you want to throw some questions in for Andrew, we've got time. I think I've gotten to ask Nat about all the things that I wanted to.
I have a few other things to kind of ask. Well, Egg Zero, you kind of have a Patreon or setup thing. I don't know how much that necessarily exists. Or maybe I'm wrong. There's some way to support you. I think you had some stuff on your Egg Zero website. It's just stuff you've done in the past.
I do have a Patreon. Yeah, I have a Patreon and I have a Ko-fi. But I don't actually like post anything on there, so I haven't really bothered like linking it anywhere. I mean, if you do want to support me, you can feel free to do so, but don't expect like any activity from me in return.
Yeah, I'm
It's,
not gonna
it's
say
just
people.
purely if you want to donate for some reason.
I think it's good for people to know that exists, because I know a lot of people like the work that you've done.
Yeah.
Yeah. The I'll check something in a second. The two other things I was gonna ask is kind of what your camera is showing here on my stream. You got your piano in the back.
Yes.
Now, as I understand, you've done I believe a few YouTube videos, at least in the past, where you've done piano. Is that still something you do a lot? Is that something you've done a lot before as well?
Yeah, I've been playing piano since I was 8 years old. Yeah, I like to play video game covers. I've kind of stopped posting stuff to YouTube just because the process of like recording it is kind of a pain, and I just don't really feel like going through that anymore. But yeah, if you go on my YouTube channel, I have tons of old videos of me doing different video game covers. If you want to check those out.
I've got a couple of good questions. How would the pit spider have worked in theory? Just like pulled you down to the pit, or just like nightmare kaiju'd up out of the darkness?
Yeah, so the idea was for it to be kind of a very rare encounter, just kind of like a cryptid type of thing. So it could, like 1 in 100 chance or something, like if you were in a room with a bottomless pit, it would just come up and like snatch you when you're like hanging on like a pole or something.
Brutal. Wolvar wanted to ask, have you yourself beat the Envy campaign?
I've tested each room in isolation to make sure they're passable, but no, I've not done like a legitimate run of the campaign.
That actually makes me feel worlds better, so I really appreciate that.
I honestly do not think I would have the patience for it, which is funny to say.
Salafa, we covered that a little bit. I'm going to re-ask just in case there's anything else to add, but I think we already covered this one, that how much of the Watcher content was considered before development, i.e. how many ideas that were in the Watcher were conceived during Rainworld and or Downpour's development? If you can talk about that.
There were a few ideas. I don't necessarily know all the ideas because some of those came from James, and I don't know how much of that was like things he came up on the spot or things he had from before. But I do know a few examples. Like I mentioned before, I know there was an idea for the Survivor campaign where there would have been some kind of entity that slowly spread its way through the world as you progress through the campaign, which we implemented as a sentient rot in the Watcher. So that was an old idea that got reused. I know the Watcher as a character was always a character that Video Cult wanted to make a campaign for, even from early on.
Yeah, I mean, for those who remember, like the 4 original Slugcats came from the battle mode, because
Yeah.
you have to understand, when Rainworld was spooling up, Towerfall was still selling gangbusters. People still talked about Nidhogg. So if you were making an indie game, it had to have this little battle mode. And so we had the Hunter, the Monk, the Survivor, and a cat, who is legally distinct
Not really.
from the Watcher.
They killed him. They removed him from Arena. They're gone now.
Gone but not forgotten. I've got the plush.
Yes. The secret plush. I was gonna ask something more specific. I guess you were talking about having a standalone game. What is your thoughts, either just in general or in your game making of Rainworld's existed for a long time? You've worked a lot on Downpour. It's built off the base game. If this is a standalone thing, someone's gonna buy it. It's gonna be the first time they'll ever notice anything Rainworld. How do you feel about someone experiencing like the next thing of Rainworld, or maybe even if someone played Watcher as their first thing of Rainworld? I guess how would you feel about that?
I hope no one played Watcher as their first Rainbow campaign. That would be brutal.
I think it could work. But
that is an interesting question. I guess that is something we're going to have to keep in mind. Is whatever the new Rainbow game is, it could potentially be someone's first Rainbow game. So I guess we'll see.
Oh yes, there was kind of irrelevant. I always had this idea that there's a lot of different ways, because you gotta have the creeping idea. Like, I always thought the water and garbage waste poisoned you, and I had to do something about it. That's a separate thing. But what was it? I don't know how much you want to talk about or are okay to talk about it. There was a point in More Slugcats, I believe you didn't want to go with Spearmaster, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that's true. Because Spearmaster was developed. All 5 of the More Slugcats were developed before Monk and Hunter released. And so when I was doing the post Monk Hunter update for the mod, I felt like Hunter and the original version of Spearmaster were extremely similar in terms of mechanics. So it felt like too redundant to me to keep Spearmaster. So yeah, there was a time I was considering just scrapping them just because they were too similar to Hunter. But then once we started fleshing out the storylines, we kind of realized there was enough way to make Spearmaster's campaign distinct enough and interesting enough that it merited it still existing alongside Hunter.
Oh, I'm glad we got it. We love our mouthless, exhausted murder.
Yeah. How did it also feel about actually making them mouthless? For us playing it, at least speedrunning it, it's so hard because we don't have a mouth and we have to carry something, which is always something we think about. Because it's a grapple and a pearl, and that's us going through the world.
Yeah.
That was the thing.
I mean, that was all just part of wanting to make each of the More Slugcats campaigns very kind of unique in their gameplay mechanics. So that was just what we came up with, the Spearmaster, to make them distinct, and we gotta live with it.
Going back to another thing I was thinking about earlier when we're talking about karma symbols is also a thing. If you don't want to say, that is okay. the ripple, it's like the karma system's called like a ripple level, if I'm not wrong, or something like
Yeah.
that. What do this visuals really show? Someone had some weird graphic where it was like a droplet going in water.
Yeah,
Would
I
you
like
kind
that.
of agree on that?
You mean
I, I,
the
I like
additional
that
karma system in Downpour specifically, right?
in Watcher.
For
And
Watcher.
yes, sorry.
Yeah, the new symbols that you get. Yeah, I like that interpretation because there's a lot of I mean, it's literally called the ripple. There's a lot of with the both in the teasers and the Watcher's lore. There's a lot of symbolism of like a droplet hitting the water and like the ripples like intersecting and manipulating each other. So yeah, I like that interpretation. But yeah, I'm not the one that drew those symbols, so
Okay.
I don't actually know the actual
Makes
intention.
sense. I get the idea that it's a lot of different characters interacting and it affects everything.
Yeah.
Is what I'm kind of getting from it. Yeah. Which also Viking Blonde will learn more about when they play more.
Yeah.
I put in my time, and there's still more.
Yes. There's always more. Railroad never ends. One thing I did want to point out, I did notice this at the beginning, but I didn't want to bring it up until after we had gone through a lot of questions. Because I did notice your shirt.
Oh,
It's really nice to see you. Because that's the GDQ shirt from
It is.
my run.
Yeah.
It's just super cool to see that.
Yeah, I love this design.
It is
I think it's
pure coincidence that Andrew and I aren't wearing the same T-shirt.
I find it funny Saint got turned into a cat, but it also is really neat.
Yeah.
I also found it really fun. I ran into someone in real life that had the shirt. Just
Really?
some random person. They'd never played Rainworld before. I was like, oh my goodness.
That's really funny.
That's so. I have a lot of friends in furry world, which might make sense. And one of them went to a furry convention, and there was a Rainworld meet, and which I thought was really interesting. But most of the people there hadn't even completed their first run of like Survivor or Monk. Was the description what I got? Someone made their own custom shirt, which was I climbed the wall and all I got was this stupid square. It's just a giant
funny.
white square.
I like that.
That was a really good one. But I find there's a lot of people that just interact with the art.
I think that's fair.
Or just know
Especially as
people.
especially as the community has grown, it's very easy to interact with it in that way. Especially Rainworld,
Yeah.
which is such a brutal game and has such a steep steep level of entry. I can definitely see that happening a lot.
It's definitely. If I was wrong, maybe you also know it as well. Was it Video Cult when the game came out or sometime after? They felt like the tutorial wasn't enough, or at least like it was enough, but it wasn't maybe as much as it probably could have been. How do you feel about it? Do you feel like it was enough and it made the tone of the game where people had to figure stuff out, or do you think people should know more? I know Remix added a lot of hints in the sleep screen.
Yeah, I personally didn't think it was enough, which is why I added the tip screen in Remix. But yeah, it depends.
Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
When I played Rainworld the first time, I found it very frustrating.
The number
And I
grows.
think it wasn't until I got more familiar with the mechanics that it started to click for me, and then I started to enjoy it. So I think for me, it was like I kind of want to get people past that initial hurdle faster, so that they don't drop the game before they get to the good stuff.
I've known a lot of people that have been like, I played the game, then dropped it, then I came back, and then I loved it after I thought about it.
Yeah,
for a
it's
bit.
very common.
I know people that have gone straight to Subterranean and then just never played a game again because they couldn't see anything. Which is unfortunate. I've only ever known one person that went into farm raise early, but they went into chimney canopy and then went back into farm raise, which is still crazy.
Wow.
But the fact that anyone did that, people do crazy things. I've noticed, which people figure it out, but sometimes it's a bit hard when you don't have a huge amount.
Yeah.
I guess that's also part of future stuff. See how new people can get into it.
I mean, at this point, I think we're all three people talking about a thing we're a big fan of from varying perspectives. You know, the
Yeah.
reason why Rainworld didn't explode on the scene is because, you know, back in the 2010s, it was a different landscape. You know, people were expecting a fucking Hat in Time. People were expecting, you know, cute
Metroidvania.
animals. They were expecting
Exactly.
cute animals, cute adventure, and cute land with some Metroidvania stuff. And to this day, there isn't another game you can point to and say, "Oh, that's like Rainworld," you know, because ecology
Yep.
simulation is fucking hard to make a game around.
Yeah.
You have, like, the core conceit of making something that's based around an ecology is that the player will not always have a fair time, and that is the scariest thing to tell a money person in video games. What do you mean? What do you mean the player can just get murdered? What do you mean? You mean the gameplay loop doesn't have a consistent input-output?
Yep.
And whatever Rainworld 2 ends up looking like, or 2 Rain, 2 World, or, you know, Rainworld, the Nightcat Chronicles, or whatever. Sorry, that was the best I could come up with. But whatever it ends up looking like, it will be dropping into a world where we know, you know, where Rainworld is a cult success. And that makes for such a fascinating jumping off point. But it's also, you know, video games. I know the video game world is very scary right now, but video games have never been selling better to more people. You can
Yeah.
make something that's even more brutal than Rainworld was a drop, and it will find its audience. You know?
I think Rainbow
Whatever's-
is always going to be unconventional. That's
Yeah.
just the spirit of the game.
Yeah. Reminds me a lot of what Noida did. Oh, there's a game that I played recently that I absolutely loved playing, and they're still updating it. It's just like this one person doing a lot and getting some people in on it. Have you heard of Look Outside? That game. This is an RPG game, but for brutal RPG games where you basically can just die and then you go back to your last save, which is like 2 hours ago, and then there's a limited amount of saves because you can only save once a day, and there's like 15 days. Is how it works normally. They did it really well. Is how I'd put it. Like for Rainbow, kind of fits that same theme of really hard. You gotta do certain things to save and certain things to progress. And the way the game incentivizes you to push yourself to do scary things and be able to do stuff, I think is super cool. I'm not. Well, you can save more than once a day, but that's how I kind of played it. But you had to go to new areas to save, which was really cool. I'm just kind of going off. It's hard to do it, but
It's
after
irrelevant.
seeing some more games, you could definitely do it.
It's a relevant point, but
And Rainbow's gone there.
we're living in a different world. You know, we're not sitting around the 2010s. You know, you're not reliant on an IGN front page to sell a game. You can put something out, and it can continue to find its audience, find its fans, continue to percolate and succeed, which Rainworld has done. You know. Oh, and I'm going to go with Eremos again. Why was Downpour the name of the DLC? Just keeping the rain theme?
I think just keeping the rain theme. I do not actually know why they went with that name, but it is what we landed on. I think Downpour contains so much stuff too that it's kind of like it's hard to find a name that encapsulates it all. So I think a more
Yeah,
generic name
Jolly
just kind of
Co-op
worked.
Remix and Jolly Expedition,
Yeah.
which has all gone its own ways.
Oh yeah, well, sorry. So Ashlight, I mean, I love talking about this kind of thing. We live in basically an age of like digital tribalism now. Like, find homies that have similar tastes, and they'll probably be the ones that tell you about cool games. You know, gone are the days of like being, you know, E3 is your make or break interview with Davy Journos, and who himself is underpaid and overworked. But
I mean, I only really played it. Because I used to speedrun Ori. That was the first game I really went into, which File Warvar said a little bit ago. And someone suggested Rainwood because it was about to release or something. And then I just didn't really think about it, but I had it in the back of my mind. And then like years later, I'm like, I can buy Cuphead, or this weird game I've never seen before called Rainworld, which I for some reason remember. I'm like, I've already watched most of Cuphead. I'm gonna buy Rainworld because I'm gonna see what happens.
I like it. That was your sliding doors moment.
So it's a lot of
There's an
it could have
alternate
been
universe
Cuphead.
with a little Cuphead avatar.
I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't have been as invested for as long with Cuphead. Rainworld without as many people made it interesting because there was stuff to work on as well.
Well, no,
Stuff that people hadn't done before.
here's the thing. Like, sorry, I'm going to gush about the games that Andrew has worked on in front of Andrew. Surprise, Mother Hubbard. That's what I do. But, and it is going to lead into Fire Wolvar's question. Rainworld is not just one thing to one group of people, and I think that's where it has shone outside of other elements. You know, Cuphead is fine. It is gorgeous, but it is a technical boss rush bullet hell. You know, there was a cartoon about it, which had nothing to do with the game apart from the characters, I guess. But like, you can either play Cuphead, or you can play Cuphead with a friend. And those are the two kind of experiences. But Rainworld is about 5 different things. It is a speedrunning game, it's a survival game, it's a story game. It's a cute chaos, you know, look how the world can kill me game. It's a wonder and exploration. You know, it is a heartbreaking story of someone trying to achieve something that is almost impossible to them and destroying everyone in their life in the process, right? Or it's just a story about a cute little guy trying to get back to his family because he got washed down in the rain, you know? Or died. That's a bad interpretation. Like, it's something that both Downpour and The Watcher have encapsulated so beautifully. And from lore hounds to technical expertise, like, everybody's found their own little joy in this space. Which then leads on to Fire Wolvar's question, which is how much do you pay attention to the high level and technical elements when you're creating stuff for new Rainworld content?
I think for speedrunning, I think my main consideration is just one, making like bug fixes and stuff. I don't want to fix any bugs that the speedrunners use for their runs. I don't want to like shake up the whole speedrunning scene when a patch goes live. So I think that's the main area where I try to pay attention to what the speedrunning community is doing.
Oh, one thing I'll always say about speedrunning is please don't let people who play at a high level, like myself, or speedrunning, decide design decisions. Do not let it do that, if that makes sense. If you want to do something, just do it. Don't let outside people say things about it. Because I know some people feel like that.
I don't think when we're actually designing the game, we have it too much in mind. It's more like after the game's already released. We don't want to shake it up once the speedrunning community gets established.
It is definitely... If you go and stare at Hollow Knight, you see all the records of different things, and it's like 7 different versions. You have to down patch to the one 5 years ago for the best time. We try to avoid that as much as possible. I appreciate that a lot, because you've done a lot of work to try to make stuff work with us. It's also been a work in progress, because like the timer was a struggle for quite a while. We'd just find different things,
Just out of
and we'd be
sync.
like,
Yeah.
we should probably, yeah, out of sync. Certain situations would make it do weird stuff.
Yeah.
Always was something. It's gotten a really good spot. The way you've done patches, I think, is great. I think the portals definitely made people unhappy, but I don't see how you could ever get around that, of just how things have changed with that.
Well,
I wonder if we should have even included the in-game timer, because I mean the speedrunners, they have split timers anyway, so I don't know if that was even a useful addition.
It does help a lot, I would say, personally, because even if it was just a hidden thing and you couldn't show it on screen, live split, having an easy thing to look at and be like, that is the thing that I can be on, makes a lot of sense. Because the timer being on makes it the actual time you're actually playing, not my computer's the worst thing in the world. I sat for 1 minute at a gate and I can't play the game. That was the biggest thing that I wanted the timer to exist for, was because a lot of people's computers just would be worse.
Yeah,
the in-game timer makes it a lot more reasonable. It also makes it reasonable for people who may be doing really, really long runs, because although we don't want people to do that, you could technically pause, go to like the main menu, and then just like make a sandwich. Like 2 hours go by, and then you come back, and it's still a 30-minute run. We haven't had anyone do that, but having it be reasonable for the player, I think is great, because I noticed that in a lot of different... I can talk about this for a long time. If you ever want to know more on how I feel about that, there's a lot to that. But it is good that there's a in-game time that isn't horrible, that we can figure it out. Because if we just do live time or try to make it our own thing, then people on console, then they can't compete as much, or people who don't know how to figure it out on certain things. It just makes it so it's easy for them.
More accessible.
And I hope it's not a lot of work for you either, considering those things. But the way it is right now has been really good, and we'll try to say things if something's like terrible.
Yeah.
But
it wasn't too much work until trying to figure out the bugs with it. That was a little tricky.
Yeah, that's why it was great when we had someone figure that out and made a mod for it.
So Andrew, I don't know how much longer we have your time for, I know I'm a chronic talker. 70s Rain did want to ask, is there anything speedrun-wise in tactics that surprised you?
If you've seen that much, we could talk about that as well.
Yeah. I haven't... To be honest, I haven't watched too many speedruns, so I'm not too familiar with the tactics, but from the couple that I have watched, yeah, there's some interesting stuff. I like the use of the rivulet monk ability. That's always fun.
Yes. That was one of the things I wasn't sure how well that would go. I think I don't know if I ever noticed that at the beginning, but I thought it was great that ended up. I know there was some issue with swimming for a little while, and then that got worked out, and then this existed.
It's funny too, the origin of that glitch too, because I was just trying to like modify things in the game to make rivulet speed faster, and there was one number I was modifying, and I kept making it bigger and bigger, and it didn't seem to be doing anything, and I couldn't figure out what that number does, so I just left it as something big because it didn't seem to do anything, but apparently it does do something under very specific situations.
That's what we talk about, the black
That's
box
really
systems.
interesting.
That's what we talk about.
It's really cool of that kind of stuff. That ended up like that. Really hard to control. Some people try to do it, because going straight up, that's not that hard. Trying to angle it in certain rooms, people are trying to do weird stuff. Like 20 minutes in a run, that'll kill you instantly if it's slightly off. But there's something else that I wasn't sure you think was interesting. Just people going pretty much the first cycle to kill the Artificer boss
That's
and
I
just
didn't even know
doing that.
they do that. That's
Um,
crazy. I would not even think
Because
that's possible.
they can just grab a body and just go. Of course, you have to get to Pebbles and then back, so you do have to rest once just because of that.
Yeah.
Um, but that is the extent. The hardest part isn't the boss. He's actually not too bad. It is the 3 tolls next to each other, right in front of the boss, because I'm sure you understand how scavengers can have a lot of stats, and also they'll call a lot of people. It seems to call a lot of people because it's
also
3 tolls.
Yeah, they're also
And
super
just a higher.
unpredictable.
If it's a scav with insane stats for just whatever thing, and now just because there's more of them, you're suddenly like, well, just see what happens with whatever shows up there.
That's
Some of
brutal.
them, it's cool how some of the scavengers work, just the different stats. It's like they can be really passive, but they can react to blocking spears in the air by throwing spears. But it also makes you see some really weird stuff, such as if a scavenger behind them throws a spear, they will attempt to hit that spear and instead just stab the other scavenger directly in the face.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool to see weird stuff like that, but it's funny. It's like they wanted to get the kill for themselves. They didn't want the other person in the way. But
I think the,
I'm trying to think of.
I think the classic scavenger experience is them just blowing themselves up in the entire toll with it.
Yes. A lot of the really cool stuff I can't even really describe to you with speedrunning, because it's all a lot of really small optimizations that exist.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a lot of really
I'm sure
big skips.
I'm sure the movement tech too. I've seen the movement tech document that's like over 100 pages long.
Yeah, that one's even doesn't really have everything by any means, because they try to keep it just base game stuff.
Keeping
But
the secret movement knowledge to themselves.
well, they didn't want to update it too crazy, so maybe we need to get other people to do stuff. But what was it? It was just the fact that Rivulet can just run into walls and wall pounce does a lot more than you think it does. And then certain situations with other characters. Wall pounce is found to be way more interesting than you think it would be. Grappling with Saints got a lot of stuff.
Rivulet's just a little guy. He's just a little guy. It's his birthday.
He just explodes, but it's so unwieldy unless you know exactly what you're doing. In which case, it's still really difficult. It's stuff like, in certain situations, you may do certain things that make no sense, but it's to make it so you get a slightly higher jump to actually do something. Or you swap hands so you can be holding the orb, Rivulet orb, and a grapple at the same time. Which I think is one of the things that was allowed to stay in the vanilla exploits, but I don't remember exactly. A lot of things with vanilla exploits are really cool. The weirdest one still being the bees in a gate, if you know what I mean with that.
No, I have not heard of that one.
Bees?
Bees in a gate. So if you, as the next region loads, are connected to the walls by bees, something really weird happens to your character, where now if you pick up something, that item is tied to whatever room you picked it up in. If you were holding it from the gate, it's tied to that gate. So when that gate unloads, the items in your hands unloads too. This can be exceedingly weird when it involves creatures, to the point where we figured out how to manipulate it in a way with slug pups so that we can get into Metropolis, because it would fling us to a specific coordinate that it's saved in a previous room when the slug pup unloaded, and would clip us into the wall, and then we could get into Metropolis with
so
a
you're
slug
telling
pup.
me that you
That's insane.
covered a slug pup in bees to travel faster?
No, we covered ourselves in bees. We transcended time and space. We then stabbed a slug pup into the ground, then force put it on our back. It's on our back while also being stabbed in the ground. it's connected to that coordinate system. We then unload it by going through a certain amount of rooms. It then, when we enter the gate, we take the proverbial slug pup that doesn't exist anymore off of our back. We get teleported to those positions in the gate room now, and now we can just crawl through the wall on the other side of the gate and activate it and get into Metropolis. Does that make sense? I know that's a lot of words, but
Sacrifice
the child for teleportation. Yep. That's the most insane thing that's been figured out with that glitch. You can also duplicate the green neuron. And so you can revive Moon as Hunter, kill her, come back the next cycle, revive her again, and then her dialogue reads a lot differently than when reading it the second time, when she said stuff like, "How long was I out?" Oh. And it's like, it's really, it doesn't give you double, because there's like the score points for Hunter. It doesn't give you the revive Moon twice.
Yeah, I'm with Caffeine on this one. It's definitely a war crime.
It's very funny you could do that.
Look,
I wanted to make a longer
was
video.
bringing like 20 neuron flies the old-fashioned way down to Moon. That's my only claim to fame in Rain World.
Nice.
I did the wall so many
I
times.
I have a lot of respect for that.
And I'd love to tell you it was just 10 times, taking 2 every time, but I didn't know. And also, it's my first time playing Rain World, so I ate one of Moon's jellies, which is why I started bringing them down. I just kept going. Yeah,
Nice.
I didn't realize how bad it would be, and it was heartbreaking. So I had to unfuck it, and I did.
Good job.
But yeah, as we're coming to the top of the hour, I think this would be a good point to bring our adventures to a close, at least on the... Because it's... Okay, no, I know I'm a chronic talker, so if anybody has any rapid-fire questions, now's a good time. Like Ashlight was asking what you think of the Meadow mod.
Meadow is super impressive. I played it a little bit. It works surprisingly well. And I would not have thought that something like that could be reasonably done in Rainbow's engine with how complicated it is.
Shout out
Actually,
to
how Monkland was.
anyone who has the patience to mod netcoding into a title, because making it when you have source access is a fucking nightmare at the best of times.
Yeah.
So to kind of hear it from both of you, it's obviously not press button online works. I assume you've got to make the game from the beginning with
Pretty
the
much,
idea
pretty
that
much.
you're going to do it online.
Yeah, I've looked at the Meadow source code. It's something like 30,000 lines long. It's insane.
Yep. I've spoken to Hempamaz a good amount because he's one of the main people that's done that. And I know it's a huge amount of work. There's a lot of other people bringing it along from there. One of the things is also Rainbow speedrunning stuff. They're doing an arena tournament, not this weekend, but this next weekend that anyone can join through Meadow. So arena, although still a bit laggy, actually works pretty well, I would say.
Nice.
With how they've made that work.
I will say though, one of my best experiences is getting to do a full night, like four people couch co-op of Downpour was brilliant.
That's awesome.
It was the moment I realized that the Gourmand is a stone cold killer. Like, I think Spearmaster's
old
slightly...
jolly co-op.
Yeah. The Gourmand
I love
and Spear, then Artificer in top murder machines.
I love the new strategies that emerged when you could use 2 different Suckat's abilities in tandem.
It used to be this funny thing with Jolly Co-op where Artificer would maul their teammates and kill them under certain circumstances. That doesn't exist anymore, but I still think about that.
Nice.
How funny that was.
Is the Gourmand killing them accidentally? Because if you do it on purpose, that's murder. So Kikiwi, I know Andrew can't talk about implementation of other mods into Rainworld base or Rainworld DLC, but I will say that making any kind of multiplayer stuff work is insanely difficult. A mod is not required to have the same level of stability or user accessibility as making it for the base game. So Meadow can be as janky or as smooth as that team wants it to be, and they're under no obligation. But if you as a dev team make a multiplayer mode, what you have to deliver has to be consistent. Otherwise,
especially for consoles have a lot of guidelines.
Yeah.
That
so
don't
think
exist
about
on
everything
PC.
Rainworld Meadow does, and then make that fuck with both Xbox and PlayStation Online services, and the nightmare bastard that is Nintendo's Online. Like, you think those spaghetti blue monsters of rot are hellish? Nintendo's got that beat. We don't even know. So yeah, sorry to jump in front of that one. It was just like, you know, that's why multiplayer mods are so wonderful.
Always. A lot of multiplayer games I'm seeing these days aren't being like full multiplayer. Forget, because like even like a game like Elden Ring, Dark Souls, any of them, you just don't summon people. There's just, you see people's ghosts, which is just old recordings of them. You see people's writings on the ground. You see people died. You get so much information, and it kind of just feels like you're in a world, even if you don't necessarily play with people. A lot of stuff.
Like, again,
Potentially
I could
there's
talk about
ways
this for
around
hours,
it.
but most multiplayer environments aren't true multiplayer. Most of the time, you're just tricking people. You know, everyone has an opinion on the Dark Souls style of like invasions and PvP and stuff. And like, oh, how did that person get me? He was over here. It's because it is barely holding together. It is barely synchronized. You know,
The idea of like a bot copies your loadout and then goes to someone else's world to attack people probably is the most reasonable, but
that's what they did for Let It Die. Like, Let It Die doesn't actually have any direct user-to-user combat. It's all like shadow clones and, you know, NPCs held by the... And that way, the only thing that you have to really sync between users is a little bit of info. Sorry, like I said, don't even get me started on that.
And to make sure we're not just talking, in case you have anything to say as well, I could just talk about stuff. If you have anything to say as well, Andrew, or ask us, that's always an option.
No, you're. Oh, I see.
Okay.
How are you enjoying the Watcher so far?
Oh, am I?
Or yeah.
So, like I said, I played it at drop, and I might have been a little bit like push his glasses up nose, because there were some individuals that didn't get the Watcher at first, and I was like, well, the Watcher is a great DLC, push his glasses up, if you're strong enough, was my review of it. Because the Watcher is like playing Survivor from the jump. Like, you have to learn this new world, this new environments, this new way to survive. And so yeah, I did first ending Spinning Top, and I did the Prince of Rot, and I didn't come back to it until a couple weeks ago. So now I'm aiming for, and I don't know what they are, but whatever the two like post-launch endings are. And so like now there are these purple flowers that unfurl and react when you find little, like, you know, ghost soul bugs. The way in which the rot seems to spread now has changed. And I'm just living in fear that I'm going to do something now that's going to lock me out of those true endings. That's my...
Yes.
But it's really, really good. And like I said, it's been good as well to get people to stop and think about like base game and Downpour as like the Pebs and Moon saga. You know, what happens with each individual Slugcat is their story, but ultimately it's in the shadow of, you know, the iterators. It is the iterators, right? I'm not saying it wrong.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, it's their world. This is another Slugcat story, but this is the story of the Echoes, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to spoil it here, but Downpour, even at base, has one of the most beautiful and most like incredible reveals that makes it worth it, you know. But yeah, and I'm an unironic Silksong enjoyer as well, so I'm very versed in difficult game has a great payoff if you're strong enough.
Yeah.
But I'm really loving it, and I'm just really happy to see Rainworld becoming what it should. And look, games are art, and it's difficult to say, does art deserve to make shitloads of money? You know, or when is art successful? But I am very glad that we are in a timeline where Rainworld didn't just languish as a hidden gem on Steam that gets talked about in top 10 lists on Watch Mojo. You know, it did get the chance to breathe, and it did get the chance to tell its story, and it kicks the crap out of me, and I thank it every time.
Yeah, I'm thankful for that too.
Yeah. And yeah, if anybody has a rich uncle at Nintendo that wants to finance some more Rainworld tattoos, I am available for sponsorship.
All right, I think I have what may be the last question to think about going into it.
Okay.
If you are able to, unless you have another one after, but if you are able to make your own game, not Rainworld at all, and you actually have the time or whatever to do it, is there something that you're like, this is the thing I'd really like to do?
I'll say none of the Rainworld's a very special game, so none of the projects I've worked on before I am as attached to as Rainworld.
Yep.
But yeah, there are some projects I've worked on in the past that I think have potential. I would like to flesh them out if I ever had time.
Okay.
Wow.
I would say, what would you want to do Rainworld related? But that might we find out later. So we'll
Yeah,
talk
you
about
can't
that
answer
another
that.
time.
You'll find out.
Yeah.
All I was going to add is that if you ever want to know the difference between someone who dabbles in game development and someone who is a game dev, it is that you do not think of a game idea. You are cursed with one, and it will.
Yeah.
You must bear that curse of that idea until you make that game. At which point you will probably have 3 more curses.
Yeah, that's always been my experience.
Well, so I want to say, ICE, thank you so much for inviting me along for this, because for those who don't know, ICE organised all of this. This was not a Will project, so I'm just happy to be along and talk Rainworld and just get into the paint. This has been wonderful.
Yeah,
I've always wanted to. Yeah, well, thank you for being here for this as well. I'm always unsure of like how much it's okay to contact you, how much you're okay to talk about things as well. You're always someone that I enjoy talking to because you've done a lot of really interesting things. And if you do stuff continuing with Rainworld or don't do stuff continuing with Rainworld, I'm totally interested in knowing where you're doing in the future. If you need QA stuff either, it's always interesting to see what goes on, because the ability to break something and figure out what the best way to remake it or suggest things, I love that a lot. It's a puzzle in a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways to figure it out.
Just on the off chance, though, that someone has swung by here and is very confused about what we've been talking about, Rainworld is an easy game for babies. In fact, you should actually buy it for your babies. If they're at the Cocoa Melon phase, just get them Rainworld. It's super easy. It's an easy game, and it's available on Steam, PlayStation,
likely
Xbox,
go on sale.
and Switch.
The summer sale.
Right.
Yeah, this was fun. Yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. I don't mind at all.
Yay.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely would be great.
To both of you, don't be a stranger. You are more than welcome to use the on live or the green room. I'm going to trundle off and show this lot an exceedingly weird indie game, and then maybe pretend to be a pirate for the rest of the night.
Nice.
That sounds amazing.
All right,
Have
but
fun.
again, seriously, Ice, thank you for organising this, friend.
Yeah, well, again, thank you for being part of it. I know we offhanded said it a long time ago, but I always had it kind of in my mind. I'm kind of at the point where I'm kind of a bit more hands-off a lot of the stuff that I've done, and it feels like, with Rainworld, especially with a lot of speedrunning stuff, a lot of other people are trying to run stuff. So it felt like a good time for me to do it
Hell
and
yeah.
talk to y'all.
Yeah. See you all again for Rainworld 2. Okay,
Yeah.
good night, friends.
All right.
Okay, hang on, let me just... Okay. Right, you Longshipian legends. That was lovely. And it's... I don't know. I don't know if I would be sitting here in front of you all if I hadn't become a Rainworld fanatic. And yeah, no, Caffeine, it was super cool. You know, I think the big takeaways from that one is just how, you know, Acapura just went deep into the Rainworld community and were like, nah, let's do this for them. Oh, word? You were making a huge mod that would have added shitloads of content to the game? Do you want to just make it an official content and make it canon? It was really cute when Andrew called the Downpour squad his OCs, and I'm like, nah, homie, you don't get it. They're Cs. You're part of this world now.